We're live.
Thank you. Sergeants, will you begin the recordings?
Recording to PC, all set.
Recording to the cloud, all set.
Backup is rolling.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Committee on Housing and Buildings, jointly with the Committee on Fire and Emergency Management. At this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? I repeat, all panelists, please turn on your videos. Thank you. To minimize disruption, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chairs, we are ready to begin.
So I'm gonna go ahead and gavel us in. Chair Borelli, I'll open, and obviously then you can give your opening statement as well. Councilmember Robert Cornegy, Chair of the Council's Committee on Housing and Buildings. I want to thank you all for joining this joint hearing with the Committee on Fire and Emergency Protection, chaired by my friend Councilmember Joe Borelli, titled Oversight, Fire, Gas, and Carbon Monoxide. I'm passionate that our City Council can protect small homeowners and our affordable housing stock and make it safe. We should not have to choose between safety and supporting homeowners and affordable housing. Safety and home ownership are not contradictory. The goal of this hearing is to demonstrate that and to support both. The most important asset for many people is their home. I'm extremely proud of a long record of protecting homeowners and affordable housing simultaneously. Today, we'll be discussing a suite of bills intended to make effective and reasonable legislation that improves the safety and quality of life for home and building owners and their tenants. We need to do a better job preventing death by carbon monoxide poisoning, but we must also make accommodations for building owners during the pandemic. Similarly, gas leaks have led to preventable deaths. And while we want owners to inspect their buildings, we want to give extra time for these inspections due to COVID-19. New Yorkers have died unnecessarily because of gaps in our sprinkler laws. We want to improve the relevant legislation, and the purpose of this meeting is to start figuring out how. This hearing allows for testimony from stakeholders, including homeowners, architects, fire safety experts, advocates, etc. This is a hearing where bills get heard and amendments are made in order to make the best bill possible that takes into account safety and does not negatively impact small homeowners and our affordable housing stock. It allows all stakeholders to help shape a bill through public testimony. We have a chance to hear about what the current dangers of fires and sprinkler safety and carbon monoxide are. This is where we listen and make the necessary adjustments to both protect tenants and support homeowners. In 2004, the council passed Local Law 7, which required carbon monoxide detectors in dwelling units. This law was expanded by Local Law 191 of 2018, which required the installation of carbon monoxide detectors in commercial spaces. Local Law 191 was inspired by the damage caused by a carbon monoxide leak in a commercial space just blocks away from City Hall. Despite these laws, the city has suffered a number of carbon monoxide-related deaths and injuries. In 2018, an elderly married couple, the parents of an NYPD sergeant, died due to carbon monoxide exposure. In February of this year, 7 residents of a Bronx apartment building were sickened with carbon monoxide poisoning. Disturbingly, 1 resident had a carbon monoxide detector that simply didn't go off. In addition to carbon monoxide-related incidents, the city has faced a number of recent deadly and near-deadly gas-related incidents. In 2014, there's a gas explosion in East Harlem that led to the death of 8 individuals. In 2015, an explosion at 121 2nd Avenue in the East Village killed 2 people. Following these incidents, the council passed Local Law 152 of 2016, requiring regular inspection of gas piping systems. Even with this legislation, the city has still suffered a number of dangerous gas leaks. These include an October 2019 gas leak in the Flatiron that led to the shutdown of several office buildings in the area, a March 2020 gas leak in Queens schools, and an October 2020 gas leak in the Upper East Side where gas levels reached explosive levels, causing building evacuations and street closures. Failure to act means that small homeowners risk losing their hard-earned equity. That's why we're working further to expand and enhance outreach requirements by DOB, We'll work tirelessly to ensure the DOB to step up and to help impacted communities understand what these requirements mean. My goal, especially during the coronavirus pandemic, is to support homeowners and our affordable housing stock. I look forward to forthright discussion from all stakeholders today. I take it as a sacred task to protect the equity and safety of homeowners and protect their most important asset. I want to thank my fellow council members for their hard work in proposing these multiple bills, and I look forward to hearing testimony from the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Councilmember Joe Borelli, and I'm the chair of the Committee on Fire and Emergency Management. Of course, we're joined today by Councilmember Cornegy and the members of both committees. Today, the Committee on Fire and Emergency Management, along with Housing and Buildings, will hear a number of bills that aim to mitigate fire and explosion hazard and prevent dangerous incidents caused by gas and carbon monoxide leaks. The fire department has historically and continues to do an excellent job responding promptly to fire emergencies and saving lives on a daily basis. However, the city must always strive to do more in the hopes of limiting the occurrence of deadly fires and gas explosions and protecting life and property throughout the city. In addition to the bills mentioned by Chairman Cornegy, the committee will also hear two bills sponsored by myself. Intro 1341, which would require certain open parking lots to have fire lanes and allow fire apparatus to reach all portions of the lot. In Staten Island, just last year, we saw firefighters injured responding to an incident at a salvage yard where cars were stacked and limited access was not given. There's also pre-considered intro number 6926, which would require all multifamily apartment buildings install carbon monoxide detecting devices in basements and common areas of such buildings. And finally, we also have intro 273, sponsored by Councilmember Donovan Richards, which is in the Fire Committee and would require the department to submit an annual report to the council on the number of fire and manhole explosions which are responded to. And additionally, I want to get more information on Intro 1146, which is affectionately known as the sprinkler bill. It's very rare when we have people coming in to speak in opposition of this bill, ranging from the real estate injury to community boards and block associations. So I'm interested to see how the city will be able to even cope with the number of applications, how this bill can be done without displacing hundreds of thousands of people, and how we can mitigate the cost on which in many cases are very small mom and pop landlords. So with that, I'll turn it back to Councilmember Cornegy and begin the testimony portion of today's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Borelli. I want to say that we've been joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Lewis, Councilmember Mizell, Councilmember Grajenchik, Councilmember Jonai, Councilmember Rosenthal, Councilmember Perkins, Councilmember Cabrera, and Councilmember Shin. That's who I see on the call. If I miss somebody, please bring it to my attention so that we can announce your presence. Thank you. Turning it back over to Committee Council. I will use this airtime to reiterate that today's hearing is an opportunity to hear from all stakeholders on the suite of bills that we're hearing. I know that I've heard en masse on 1146B the concerns that the community has, and I echo the sentiments of Chair Borelli, who has articulated the fact that this is actually the first time I've heard from the public, the real estate industry, small homeowners, the affordable housing stock responsible developers, all simultaneously in opposition to the bill. Today gives us an opportunity to put that on record and to hopefully come up with a methodology that will not only protect the safety of tenants in these buildings, but also protect our affordable housing stock, not displace tenants, and not irresponsibly add burden onto small homeowners through unnecessary fines and fees. So that is what we intend to do today. Thank you, Committee Council. If Committee Council doesn't chair in, I'll keep rambling. So I'm begging you.
I was muted by accident. Sorry, I'm back. Thank you. I am Janan Zilka, counsel to the Council's Committee on Housing and Buildings. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called to testify, at which point you will be unmuted. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question, please use the Zoom raise hand function and I will call on you in order. We'll be limiting council member questions to 3 minutes, including responses. We will first be hearing testimony from the administration, which will be followed by testimony from members of the public. Today, Department of Buildings Commissioner Melanie LaRocca and FDNY Assistant Chief of Operations John Hudgens will be testifying. FDNY Counsel Julian Bizzell will be available for Q&A. We will now administer the oath. Commissioner LaRocca, John Hudgens, and Julian Bizzell, please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Commissioner LaRocca, do you affirm?
Thank you. Yes.
FDNY Counsel Julian Bizzell, do you affirm?
I do.
Mr. Hodgins, do you affirm? Sorry,
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may begin when ready. Commissioner LaRocca, please begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Cornegy, Chair Borelli, and members of the committees on housing and buildings, as well as fire and emergency management. I'm Melanie LaRocca, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Buildings. I'm joined by my colleagues from the New York City Fire Department who will also be providing testimony. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss the bills before the committees. And let me start by thanking the council, as I often do, for your continued commitment to improving safety for all New Yorkers. We share in this goal together. The construction industry is constantly changing, and this department is committed to ensuring that our laws and regulations appropriately address developments in the industry. We look forward to partnering with you to revise the New York City construction codes for the benefit of New Yorkers in the coming months. Together, we will ensure that our construction codes are up to date and that they reflect advancements in technology, as well as the latest standards for life safety. Now, turning to the bills before the committee today. Intro 842 and Intro 1036 would require new and existing residential buildings 40 feet or greater in height to install luminous egress path markings and exit signs. The department supports the intent of these bills as they would improve safety for building occupants by indicating the way out of a building during an emergency. However, the department is concerned about the impact, both practical and financial, that these requirements would have on existing residential buildings, particularly during these unprecedented times. For example, a building owner would need to ensure that existing lighting levels are sufficient to charge luminous egress path markings and that exit signs are appropriately illuminated, which could require electrical work. The requirement that a registered design professional verify that luminous egress path markings are appropriately installed would also add cost for a building owner undertaking this retrofit. Intro 1146 would require existing residential buildings 40 feet or greater in height to install automatic sprinkler systems. Like requiring existing residential buildings to install luminous egress path markings and exit signs, this requirement would improve safety for building occupants by providing a heightened level of fire protection. While the department supports the intent of this bill, from our experience with Local Law 26 of 2004, which required existing office buildings 100 feet or greater in height to install automatic sprinkler systems, we are far too familiar with the challenges a requirement like this pose for existing buildings. For example, because these are residential buildings, access to occupied multiple dwelling units for the purposes of installing sprinkler systems will present a significant challenge for building owners and will be disruptive to tenants. Water supply and water pressure in existing buildings must also be taken into consideration. Inadequate water supply and water pressure could require a dedicated connection to the city's water main and the installation of a fire pump, all of which could add additional time and cost for a building owner undertaking this retrofit. Additionally, from our experience with Local Law 26, 10 years may not be sufficient time for a building owner to complete this work in an existing building. This proposal merits further discussion with building owners to fully understand the challenges it may present for them. Intro 356 would require the department to inspect 10% of buildings constructed before 1969 to determine whether such buildings have party wall balconies or fire escapes. The bill would require the department to conduct tens of thousands of inspections to ascertain whether a building has a party wall balcony or fire escape. The department's existing resources do not account for the substantial workload, which means this requirement would significantly burden our valuable inspectorial resources. As such, we do not support this bill, but we look forward to discussing it further with the committees and sponsor to better understand the issues the bill seeks to address. It should also be noted that the construction codes require owners to maintain their buildings, including party wall balconies and fire escapes, in a safe condition. Further, all buildings greater than 6 stories must have their exterior walls inspected periodically. These inspections include any pertinences on a building, including party wall balconies and fire escapes. Any deficiencies identified during these inspections must be reported to the department and addressed by building owners. Intro 859 would require that the department conduct certain gas inspections within 5 days, specifically after a hazardous gas condition is addressed and an inspection from the department is requested. The department would be required to perform an inspection within 5 days. Restoring gas to a building is a priority for this department, given the impact a gas outage has on tenants. The department recently released a service level tracker, a new online tool that allows the public to see average wait times for department services, including plumbing inspections. This tool provides increased transparency to the public and allows building owners to see how long they have to wait for an inspection after that inspection is requested. The department is currently meeting the demand for development inspections at service levels not seen in the department's history and is already meeting the service level being proposed in this bill with existing resources. However, we're concerned that codifying this service level may result in the need for additional inspectorial resources in the future. And additionally, gas inspections can be requested through DOB Now inspections, which allows for nearly all types of development inspections to be scheduled online. This is important because it's easier for our customers to schedule inspection appointments. It offers more precise inspection scheduling and improves inspection tracking and notification. The bill would roll back the progress we've made with DOB Now, which provides our customers with the ability to schedule their inspections when it's most convenient for them. Intro 1459 would prohibit mechanically exhausted air from interfering with natural ventilation sources. The department is supportive of further clarifying that exhaust systems must not interfere with natural ventilation sources. The New York City Mechanical Code addresses exhaust systems and provides that air removed by mechanical exhaust systems must be discharged outdoors at a point where it will not cause a nuisance. Further, the Mechanical Code provides minimum clearances exhaust outlets must meet, which take into account other building openings, including those used to provide natural ventilation. Even existing buildings altering their mechanical systems must comply with these requirements. Lastly, the department is still reviewing the 4 bills that were recently added to the agenda for this hearing, but I will briefly discuss 2 of those, which both dealt with extending upcoming deadlines. Intro 2151 and pre-considered intro extend the deadlines associated with the inspection of gas piping systems in certain community districts and with the installation of carbon monoxide detectors in certain assembly, business, and mercantile occupancies. The department has no objections to these extensions but urges building owners to not delay compliance with these requirements. With that, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you. I'll now turn it over to my colleagues at the fire department, who will offer testimony on the remainder of the bills on today's agenda.
Good afternoon, Chair Borelli, Chair Carnegie, and all the council members present. My name is John Hodgins, and I am the Assistant Chief of Fire Operations at the New York City Fire Department. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about the 15 bills before the committee today. When it comes to fire emergencies, the City of New York is currently in the safest period in its history. In the 20th century, it was not uncommon to experience hundreds of fire deaths each year. Over the last 2 decades, these numbers have fallen and continue to fall. Over the course of the de Blasio administration, the city has experienced fewer than 90 fire deaths each year. In 2019, the total number of fire fatalities was 66, and we are on pace for a lower number in 2020. The number of serious fires has also decreased over the last 20 years. This success, which has been achieved here and in cities across the country, is not accidental or inevitable. It is the result of hardworking and well-trained firefighters operating in conjunction with strong fire codes and building codes. As a result of thoughtful planning and legislation, buildings are safer and New York City experiences fewer serious fires than ever. When buildings do experience emergencies, both occupants and first responders are safer and better able to manage the situation. The City Council has played a key role in these advances by working with the Department of Buildings and the Fire Department to strengthen and maintain effective codes. We thank you for your previous work in this area, and we are pleased to continue discussing additional changes here today on a variety of topics by way of these 15 pieces of legislation on fire, gas, and carbon monoxide. Intro 273. This bill would require the fire department to submit an annual report to the council regarding the department's responses to manhole fires and emergencies and explosions. The department tracks these responses and would be able to report them. The fire department has no objection to this bill. Intro 1341. This bill would require certain open parking lots to have fire lanes so that a fire truck may reach all portions of the lot. The fire department supports this bill. Intro 312. This bill would require all R2 occupancies to install portable fire extinguishers in a common area on every floor with at least one occupied unit. It may seem counterintuitive, but attempting to extinguish an apartment fire with a portable fire extinguisher from the hallway may do more harm than good. Our basic fire safety message to apartment residents is that they and their family members should leave when there is a fire, close the door behind them, and immediately dial 911 as soon as possible. A fire may grow in the time that it takes for a resident to access a fire extinguisher from a common area and return to the unit to try to fight the fire. Opening the apartment door may also cause a draft, which provides oxygen that can fuel the fire, causing it to grow and spread. The resident may be faced with a larger and more dangerous event when they re-enter the apartment with an extinguisher. Also, apartment residents are not trained to fight a fire, and doing so can be more complicated than you would think. For example, grease fires in the kitchen are common and best extinguished by smothering. If you use a fire extinguisher not designed for a grease fire, it may blast the grease fire with a burst of air that can spread the grease and the fire. The safest course for an individual experiencing an apartment fire is to follow proper evacuation procedures and alert the fire department by calling 911. We are concerned that this legislation may detract from that course and inadvertently put residents in greater danger. Intro 1256. This bill would require residential occupancies with 3 or more dwellings that are part of a mixed-use building to create a fire and emergency preparedness plan. It would also require mercantile occupancies that are part of a mixed-use building to create a fire and emergency preparedness plan or level 2 plan. The fire department supports the concept of this legislation and the concept preparedness in buildings of all types. However, level 2 plans are designed for buildings which may experience challenges in addressing fires or non-fire emergencies due to their type, size, or complexity, such as malls and other large mercantile establishments and healthcare facilities. Such plans anticipate that there is a staff on site to implement the plan, including communicating with residents and providing assistance to the fire department. Additionally, the fire code already requires coordination of emergency preparedness plans in a single mixed-use building. We do not believe that all mixed-use buildings would benefit from developing a level 2 plan. Mixed-use buildings with storefront spaces or other occupancies of limited size or complexity would not have the resources or need to have such a plan. Recently, we have greatly enhanced and expanded the emergency preparedness information and materials distributed to apartment buildings to help them address emergency preparedness. And we think this may be a better approach. We are happy to work with the sponsor to discuss how to best promote emergency preparedness in mixed use and other types of buildings. Intro 1746. This bill would require any gas-fired low-pressure boiler that is not fully automatic to be operated by or under the supervision of a person who holds a certificate of fitness issued by the fire commissioner. After conferring with colleagues at the Department of Buildings and in the sponsor's office, we have been unable to identify any widespread use of non-automated low-pressure gas boilers. If these units do exist, it is unclear why they would necessitate monitoring by an individual with his certificate of fitness. We would like to know more about the motivation for this legislation before taking a position. We thank the council and the committees for the opportunity today to discuss this legislation. We would be happy to take your questions at this time.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to questions from Chair Cornegy and Chair Borelli. As a reminder, if council members other than Chair Cornegy would like to ask a question of the administration, please use the Zoom hand function, and I will call on you afterwards. Chair Cornegy, please begin.
Chair Cornegy, you're on mute.
Thank you. Before I begin my testimony, I want to say thank you to Commissioner LaRocca for being here. Thank you for Assistant Chief John Hoggins for showing and for testifying. And I want to let just the general public know that today is a hearing. There is no vote or action to be taken today. So I know that many people have reached out to my office for a no vote on several bills. There is no vote today. We are hearing these bills in an effort to make sure that we could get the best and most productive and efficient bills, and your input is greatly appreciated in this process. So with that being said, I believe that we were going to hear from or get statements from the bill's sponsors, committee council.
Yes, that's going to happen during the question and answer.
Okay, so I'll begin my questions in a general fashion, and I guess it's to Commissioner LaRocca. Does DOB keep track of fire, gas, and carbon monoxide incidences that occur in the city?
So thank you, Chair. The department does not keep track of those incidences. However, we do play an important role in that our colleagues at Fire, who are our first responders, will on a number of occasions request the services of the department for incidences that fall within one of those three that you mentioned. So we do certainly respond to incidences where department resources are needed. Typically, that does look at structural concerns related to fire.
So I guess the same question I would pose to FDNY. Does FDNY keep track of fire, gas, and carbon monoxide incidences that occur in the city?
Well, yes, if we receive a 911 call or an alarm through a different, transmission method, we go to the scene to mitigate the emergency. All of these actions and this response is tracked in our CAD system, which is our computer assist dispatch system. So yes, I mean, we do have records of these incidents in our CAD system.
So who and where can this warehouse of information be accessed? Can it be accessed from the general public? Can it be accessed from the council? Or is it just an internal kind of mechanism that you keep that?
For the most part, it's an internal mechanism. It is available on open source data. It may not be broken down into individual addresses, but the information is available as to how many incidents the department has responded to.
And I think it's important for us to know that as we're crafting bills, that we think anecdotally we're getting information on some of these incidences. It would be great to be able to have as a resource that system access to us. And you said by open source we can get it, but I certainly, as the chair of the committee, would like to have a more effective and efficient way to share that information with the council, at least with this committee.
Yes, we would be open to further discussion on providing that type of information.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to nail you to the wall on that one, Assistant Chief. So yes, I'd like to offline talk about how we can do that and have a better line of communication on these incidences that take place, so we could better craft legislation jointly around safety. So I look forward to that. But what's the process for reporting? I'm sorry. Is DOP the proper entity to receive and respond to reports of these incidents? I know that you get your colleagues from FDNY and from other places to report this information. Is that the best system for DOB? And if not, what would be a better system for DOB to have that information?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, obviously, for anybody who has a circumstance for one of those three that you mentioned, Chair, obviously 911 is the right response, immediate response for any individual. And yes, I think the process we have with fire department is exceptional. We have a great partnership between our two agencies and work very closely together to ensure that our buildings are safe for occupants. So yes.
So gas leakages that are reported are generally done directly from the you get that information from the 311 system? Is it self-reporting? Can someone else report? What's the mechanism for reporting gas leakages or fire code violations?
So I'll start, and Fire, you can chime in on the second part there, but obviously the bulk of the work from the Department of Buildings is through the 311 system, and we think that system is works very well for us. It provides the community with a level of transparency, since those complaints do live on our website at the associated address where a complaint comes in. So we think the transparency that system has right now for us is a very beneficial one. Fire, if you want to add more.
Sure. For a gas leak, that's considered an immediate emergency, and we would the best method of notifying us would be through 911, and we would have an immediate response to any type of gas leak. As far as fire code violations, they could be reported through the 311 system, and we will address through our complaint process.
Do either one of the agencies know how many gas leak reports from 311 came in 2019 or any subsequent years?
So you're asking about 311. I'm unaware of how many there are, but we can look into it and get back to you with that.
Again, I just think that that's pertinent information to be able to really drill down on legislation that gets to the safety issues that we want to address today, but also doesn't target small homeowners or affordable housing stock or those kind of things. That I think that the more we drill down and the more central we can get to those reports, we'll have a better picture on where we should be focusing the legislation. So thank you. And again, offline, I'd like to have a conversation with you about those annual reports,
Yes.
especially for 2019.
From the fire department perspective, we continually message that for any type of gas leak or order of gas to call 911. It's an emergency that requires a response, an immediate response of our units. So the best method of reporting a gas leak is definitely through the 911 system.
Okay. And then lastly, before I throw to my colleague and co-chair, Joe Borelli, what measures, Commissioner LaRocca, what measures does DOB have in place to ensure proper certification of fire, gas, and carbon monoxide incident prevention within the buildings inspected?
Certainly. So with respect to carbon monoxide and gas and fire, the department does not perform proactive inspections around these devices and the functionality of them. We certainly do review plans to ascertain whether carbon monoxide devices are appropriately installed in a building that is being constructed, or where you have major alterations to a building or a space. And I will note that the construction code does establish a maintenance requirement for particularly carbon monoxide detectors devices, and requires that they're periodically replaced. That is on top of the housing maintenance code that requires for residential buildings owners to do effectively the same.
So the remainder of my questions, I will come back on a second round. I throw or pass the baton to my co-chair, Councilmember Borelli.
Thank you very much for handing it over to me for a brief second. I have questions about Intro 1146, but I just want to ask the Assistant Chief if he, frankly, if he misses seeing me in the gym. That's what I really want to know about. I don't think he's listening.
Oh, in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, again, we're closed down for a little while.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
Commissioner LaRocca, you mentioned Intro 26 of 2004, and you referenced some of the problems that have arisen from that. So do you know what was the timeline written into that bill? I tried to look it up, to be honest, while we were doing this. I just didn't have time. But do you remember what the timeline was for that bill?
15 years.
So we have just crossed that threshold. Are we in 100% compliance?
We are not at 100% compliance. And certainly while we've seen the number of buildings move forward and come into compliance with Local Law 26, as of this moment, we're at about 52%.
So half roughly are done within the time frame prescribed by law. Can you just go through some of the challenges that have resulted in that non-compliance?
I think we've heard certainly from owners who have expressed a concern around the lack of vacancy in the units, with that being a limitation on their ability to get in and sprinkler those spaces. And again, Local Law 26 of 2004 was specific to commercial buildings. And so that is, certainly a challenge. It does require a significant investment of resources, as well as, the need to look at your building system to ensure that you have the capacity to increase service on the water.
And can you just explain how long the Department of Buildings procedure is, or how long it takes from when an architect or engineer files for the sprinkler permit to when it's finally signed off on?
Respectfully, Councilmember, a lot of that is dependent on the applicant and their ability to submit to the department code compliant documentation. So I will say this, our I'm sorry, I'm got a little feedback there. So our turnaround time for first reviews of applications is probably at our best levels that we've seen in modern history for the department. So you're looking at an application that is received from the department and you're under 10 days for that first review. So I feel very confident in our ability to review documentation. And I certainly feel equally as strong when it comes to the end of that process for inspection sign off. Again, an area where we've seen tremendous.
Yeah, my question wasn't meant to be a criticism of the length of time, but rather how many people does it take in your department to provide that turnaround time?
I mean, that's, it is a team effort to do that, right? You have applications that are submitted that take I apologize, my light's turned off, that take the work of the borough office that those are submitted to. So hard to quantify an exact number. I'd be happy to come back to you with a more refined answer.
Do we know how many buildings there are that are covered by Intro 26, or how many 100-story buildings there are?
Of Intro 26 of 2004, the number is 1,321.
And is there, so right, so that's, I mean, to me, that sounds like a workable number in 15 years. Do we even have an estimate on how many buildings are over 40 feet tall in the city of New York?
I am looking, I thought I had a estimate, but about 85,000.
So, we're talking a significantly larger number of buildings that would have to go through almost an identical process to buildings that are over 100 stories, albeit the plans might not be as complex or as elaborate or large, but the process is roughly the same.
Correct.
And it would take perhaps 85 times as many people for your agency to provide the same turnaround time in terms of man hours as it would to provide the level of service you're providing now to the 1,000 and change buildings that we're dealing with.
I could certainly see a universe where additional work for this population of approximately 85,000 buildings would have an impact in our staffing.
Frankly speaking, I mean, this would be something that would be tremendously burdensome on the agency with current manpower levels.
We are currently not staffed to accommodate this.
Can you go through some of the, and this might be secondhand, and if it is secondhand, I think we have other people coming up, but in your experience, what has been some of the hardships faced by tenants of Intro 26?
I would defer to owners who could speak more accurately about the interactions they're having with their tenants, but I will say, broadly speaking, we do know that the installation of sprinklers can be invasive work. It does require the removal of certain portions of wall. So that is certainly a true statement that, sprinkler work is very much so, a real amount of labor. That being said, again, as I mentioned in my testimony, we are certainly, as a department, very interested in any opportunity to discuss improvements to safety, and certainly do believe that sprinklers are an element to help move that forward.
In your experience, is the work typically done by using an existing water main to charge the lines, or is a separate water main needed that could ascend through common areas?
It would be an individual building assessment.
But in a building that might be 41 stories, 41 feet high, we're not talking the type of building that might have some central chamber with which they can put these lines that go vertical easily in, correct?
Again, I would defer to the individual nature of a building and how it's designed, but I could certainly see a scenario where there would be a need to have some work done in order to accommodate the system.
Okay, well, I will leave it at that. I mean, to be honest, I think all the other bills we're hearing today We could spend some time talking about them, but I don't think any of them really come to the same threshold as intro 1146, because with 1146, we are potentially looking at displacing hundreds of thousands of residents with an extremely costly process, with a potential bureaucratic nightmare, because we don't have the staffing to handle 85% or 85 times more applications in this. But I will turn it back to Chairman Cornegy, and we will move on from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that line of questioning, Chair Borelli. I want to let us know that we've been joined by Councilmember Brennan, Councilmember Powers, Councilmember Rodriguez, and Councilmember Deutsch. I think we are at that point where we'll hear from colleagues who will ask questions, first from the sponsors of bills, and they will have 5 minutes on the clock to talk about their bill and to ask any question that they may feel that's relevant to this hearing. So committee council, we have 5 minutes on the clock for bill sponsors at this point.
Thank you, Chair. I will now call on council members to ask questions. First, I will go by sponsors of bills that are being heard today. So if you're a sponsor of a bill, please raise your hand. For sponsors who are making statements, we are limiting it to 5 minutes. Otherwise, questions will be 3 minutes. There will be 3 minutes allotted for the second round of questioning. First, we're going to go to Councilmember Grodenchik.
Time starts now.
Thank you. Thank you, chairs. My chair and Cornegy and Chair Borelli, I thank you for holding this hearing. I would like to read a brief statement, and then I probably will have a question for the fire department. I'm pleased today to have 3 bills that are being heard during this hearing, and they all relate to fire safety. We have heard about Intro 842, which would require owners of all new and existing buildings 40 feet or higher to install luminous egress path markings to delineate an exit path, making getting out of a smoking fire much easier. Intro 1036 would require as well installing directional signs in buildings 40 feet or higher. And what seems to be the main topic of concern today, Intro 1146B would require owners of residential buildings over 40 feet tall to install automatic sprinklers by the end of this decade. The original plan on this bill was drafted a couple of years ago. I want to add to that, was for upgrades to take place over a 10-year period. I understand and I've heard the concerns, and I foresee amendments to this bill that would track that 10-year plan. Building owners would need to file an interim report describing a plan for compliance over several year period of time. And this bill, as has been mentioned, was modeled after local 2004 local law that required commercial buildings to retrofit with sprinkles. I am not oblivious to the need for financing here. And a year ago, we have asked for legislation to be drafted that would accompany this bill that would give either tax credits or very, very reasonable loans. And again, that was before the pandemic hit. These bills were drafted in the wake of several very severe fires that occurred in New York City, which were quite deadly and among the deadliest fires that had occurred over the past quarter century. Having said all that, I have heard from many people, my colleagues included. I have met via Zoom meetings with associations. I've heard from individual owners and co-ops in my district, and I know that my colleagues have as well. And the bills, of course, were drafted with the idea that we promote as best as possible public safety. And I guess my question would be for the FDNY, although it's always good to see Commissioner LaRocca, the FDNY, outside of sprinklers, Chief, because I'm not on Chair Borelli's committee, but I am on this committee, Housing and Buildings. Outside of sprinklers, what's the single most important thing? I know we have laws for smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. And I would be interested in hearing your opinion on how important it would be to retrofit buildings and what other steps we could take as we go forward. And I know we're going to hear from a lot of people today, and I look forward to hearing from people about our bills today as well. So, Chief, if you could.
Yes. So automatic sprinkler systems are always a positive thing to have when to mitigate, fires. They give you early detection and immediately, apply water to the fire. I mean, from fire department's perspective, sprinkler systems are a good thing. We are aware there are challenges for other agencies and the homeowner with this bill, but the fire department is always in favor of sprinkler systems.
I appreciate that. I think Commissioner LaRocca has made herself quite clear as always. And Chair Cornegy, Chair Borelli, I'm going to give back the balance of my time for now. And I look forward to hearing from the many people who are going to be testifying today about all the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we're going to be hearing from Councilmember Rosenthal, followed by Councilmember Drum. As a reminder, council members who are making an opening, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will move on to straight questioning. Councilmember Rosenthal, please go ahead.
Time starts now.
Thank you very much. I'm not making an opening statement. I'm just going to questions. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Thank you. My questions are actually geared toward the Deputy Commissioner from the Fire Department. And have to do with the experience we've had with small fires in our district. I'm wondering, we've had situations where the fire people have gone into a smaller building and there are walls that are illegally put up so that the firefighters don't really know what's in there. And I just wanted to know about your experience with that. I'm going to actually give you all 3 questions to answer because I think they're all related. There are also a lot of times when the DOB safety plan for a building does not match the FDNY safety plan. And I'm wondering what work you do around that. And then lastly, my bill related to the party wall balconies, actually is probably more for Commissioner LaRocca, but Deputy Commissioner, if you have any thoughts about that one, we'd appreciate it. The genesis of that bill is a situation when building owner had to repair their stairwell, and so sent a note around to all the residents saying that if they wanted to go in and out of the building, they had to use the fire escape, which then drew our attention to the party balconies, which were also quite shabby. Anyway, so those are my questions, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, so just to reiterate, to be sure, your first question is in regards to illegal alterations done within a building?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so when we come across this, our process is to notify the Department of Buildings. We also take into consideration the impact of the alteration, and if it poses a risk to the occupants, such as egress, or usually it would be an egress issue. And if that's the case, we have a process internal, which is to actually vacate the area. But but these are what we call referrals, because it is the Department of Building function to look into illegal alterations and matters like that. But we do take immediate action if there is a life hazard, a safety hazard.
Can I just real quickly, chairs, may I have a little bit more time so the FDNY can answer these questions?
Alderman Rosenthal, this is a recurring theme with you. I feel like I'm the principal. You're in the principal's office. I hope we're not setting a terrible precedent here.
All right, I will actually keep it very short. I'm just wondering, even to the point you just made, Chief, if you have a sense of how many times that happens over the course of a year.
Unfortunately, I do not have that, at my,
okay.
right
We
now.
can move on. That's fine.
We'll be willing to work with you on that.
And then similarly with the difference between the safety plans between DOB and FDNY?
So on that, I'm not exactly sure. I would need I might need an example as to where that occurs. I'm not aware of that.
I guess in some ways it's similar to the first question. It's when you would show up at a site, you have the building on your board based on your building plans that you have on record, and then should there be illegal walls, you run into that problem.
Yes, and that the process would be as I described
okay.
in the earlier question.
Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we're going to be hearing by Councilmember Drum, followed by Councilmember Rodriguez.
Time starts now.
Thank you very much, Chair Cornegy and Chair Borelli. I'm going to make a statement first and then another statement. We need more time. That's the plea I hear from buildings, particularly co-ops in my district, when confronted with the city's gas line inspection deadline in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis. In 2016, faced with the recent memory of two explosive tragedies and aging gas infrastructure citywide, this council passed legislation that was then enacted as Local Law 152. Our goal, whenever we pass legislation aimed at promoting building safety, is to get individuals and entities to comply. Gas lines are such an important issue that we have to do everything we can to facilitate compliance. With Local Law 152, co-ops and other residential buildings in my district and throughout the city are left scrambling at a time when we are all dealing with an added pandemic-induced challenge. Gas line inspections and especially remediation can entail a whole host of concerns, from a hefty but critical financial investment to the displacement of residents. For this initial round of inspections, extending the deadline for 6 months is quite reasonable. Intro 2151A also includes measures to solicit public comment and implement education and outreach. I appreciate Chair Cornegy and his work with me to ensure that these items were included in the current legislation. And I just want to say it is good to see our Commissioner, Commissioner LaRocca, who I have not seen in this role. I'm more familiar with you in your previous role with the School Construction Authority. And I appreciate your support of the legislation. And just want to remind you that the deadline for community districts 1, 3, and 10 are coming up at the end of December. So it's my hope that we can work together quickly to pass this legislation before that deadline occurs. And again, thank you, Chair Cornegy, for your input into the legislation, and Chair Borelli for giving me time to speak today as well. Thank you very much.
Chair Drum, I want to let you know that whatever is necessary for us to get this passed before the deadline, you can count on me and this committee to work with you to get it done.
Yeah, I did too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Cornegy.
Next up, we'll be hearing from Councilmember Rodriguez, followed by Councilmember Chen.
Time starts now.
Thank you, chairs. Today, I would like to talk about Intro 312, which I'm a prime sponsor alongside Councilmember Brannan, which will amend the New York City Fire Code in relation to requiring portable fire extinguisher in all multiple dwellings. We know that everyone is going through a tough financial situation, but we need to invest to save lives. Recently, we lost 2 lives in my district in the Bridges building in a fire. I believe that the city should work with the private sector to help install these fire extinguishers if necessary. But our priority has to be the safety of New Yorkers, especially during this upcoming colder month. In the month of November alone, we saw multiple fires occur in residential buildings in Northern Manhattan and Marble Hill. Some of these buildings did not have portable fire extinguisher ready and quickly available for residents to use. 260 Audubon was one of those where 2 individuals lost their life. The last fire happened 3 days ago in Marble Hill. We don't know what would have happened if this bill would have been in place, which will require portable fire extinguisher to be installed in a common area on every floor with at least 1 dwelling unit. I would like to, I would like to end thanking the men and women in the fire department for the great job that they do every day when they put their life in risk to save others. And I would like to hear from the fire departments and what is your stand on this bill?
Okay. Well, first of all, sorry about the residents of your community. We did respond to that fire. I'm well aware of it. The last few days. But as far as portable fire extinguishers in the common area of a multiple dwelling, we feel we don't support that. It seems counterintuitive, but the fact is that to operate a fire extinguisher requires, although it's not complicated, a little bit of training. There's many components that have to be taken into consideration if somebody was to use a portable fire extinguisher. I mean, one of our most important messages to residents is when there's a fire to leave the apartment or the dwelling, close the door and dial 911. We feel that is the best course of action. If there was a fire extinguisher, our fear is that the person would open the door to their apartment, go into the hallway. I don't know how many feet away the fire extinguisher is. Once they open the door, there is an inrush of air that feeds the fire. So all the time that's going on, the fire could be growing exponentially. And the person who takes the fire extinguisher may not be familiar with its use and when its use would even be detrimental in the hands of a firefighter, because a fire extinguisher is designed for small fire. Now, if this fire started to expand and you attempt to use a fire extinguisher, it's actually a dangerous operation. There is also different types of fire extinguishers and that are designed to be used for different materials that are on fire. Regular combustibles require water. Flammable liquids require like dry chemical or foam, and electrical fires even require a specific type of fire extinguisher. So I think that's the reason why we don't think that this is we don't support this bill.
Okay. I just hope that we can continue having conversation. I think that even though we look at a pilot project to see how we work in a particular area, I think that unless we, and I do respect your knowledge and as a department that we rely on to keep us safe when it comes to fire, but I feel that I understand your knowledge about this, but I also feel that we have not have it yet. So we don't know what the result is. And I do believe that if we have to look at any pilot project to see how they work, here in my district at 96 Island Street, we lost, one of my neighbors a few years ago who used to run the larger dog runner here in Manhattan. And I think that if we would be a fire extinguisher there, his life could be saved. And of course, this is assumption based on what we know, we will rely on you for your knowledge. But I think that if we can look at the possibility, even if we can do a pilot project, I hope that we can have conversation about it.
Yes, we are always open to, further discussion or, to make fire safety, improve fire safety in any situation. One thing very important also to emphasize is that that members that people have working smoke detectors, and how important it is to change the batteries 2 times a year. Usually when you change your clocks back the 2 times during the year, it's a good time to change the battery in your smoke detector. And that will save lives, because when the smoke detector also notifies you in very early stages of a fire where you still have a chance to get out safely, and always close the door.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, next we're going to be hearing from Councilmember Chin, who'll be asking a question, followed by Councilmember Rosendahl, who'll be asking a second round of questions. Thank you.
Time starts now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to all the chairs. I wanted to talk about 1146A, and I just heard from the fire chief, and I agree with you that we need to do more on education on fire safety. In my district, I have a lot of, old tenement building, and we had some tragic fires since I've been, in the city council, and that is a concern that I have. And that's why I signed on to as a co-sponsor for the sprinkler bill, because that's like automatically you think that the sprinkler system will be the best. If there's a fire, the water comes on and it would put out the fire. And I also want to thank a lot of my constituents who are small property owner who have reached out in the last couple of days about their concern of the cost factor, the invasiveness, and also issues that we haven't thought about. I chair the Committee on Aging, and a lot of the residents are seniors, and I just can't imagine seeing them having to be relocated in order for the sprinkler system to be installed. And I think the Commissioner LaRocca talked about that. And so I think that what can we do with property owners and owners to really improve, fire safety education? Let's see if there's a way that we can work together, because some seniors don't know how to change the battery on their alarm. So, if we can work together with the owner to really do that for the resident, that might be helpful. I think fire safety is a big concern. We're really ready to work with everyone on that. And I guess the assistant chief, how can the fire department really work with us to work with landlords to do more of this regular inspections and safety education so that we can prevent tragedy from happening?
Well, the fire department is a big proponent of fire safety, and you did touch upon the working smoke detectors, and that would be the number one, fail safe or fire safety measure that could be taken by a building owner to make sure that all of the apartments have working smoke detectors, and also the individual apartment owner or renter. So that is key. That is one of the main components of that. And also
time expired.
Always maintaining a means of egress, and making sure that you have access to, your fire escape or whatever it may be. So that, in conjunction with the smoke detectors, is a great fire safety lesson that the fire department is always in reinforcing.
I think because of all the a lot of the unanswered questions to 1146B and all the concern that's being raised right now that I haven't heard about, and they are a really important issue. I am going to get off the bill. I'm withdrawing my support right now for 1146, but I still want to make sure that we work with, property owners, small building owner, to ensure fire safety. And if there's ways that we can develop a program to do that, I look forward to working with the fire department and the small property owner. Thank you.
Okay, I do have also from the fire department is Julian Basil, our FDNY counsel. If we have a minute, I would pass it on to him if he has anything to say about this question.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yes, thank you. Council member, I do want to emphasize that in recent years, the fire department has really enhanced and expanded the public information about emergency preparedness and fire safety in apartment buildings. We put out an expanded emergency preparedness guide, and pursuant to a recent local law, we have an evacuation checklist. And the HPD has also joined us on the landlord side in terms of encouraging building owners to talk to apartment residents about emergency preparedness. This isn't just about fire safety, it's also about weather emergencies and all kinds of other conditions that might affect the building, loss of power, things of that sort. So we have been trying to encourage building owners to talk to apartment residents and have a discussion about what can be done by the building owner and what can't be done by the building owner, what residents themselves should be preparing for in the event of various kinds of fire safety or other emergencies. From a fire safety perspective, as the chief explained, the key is usually the smoke detector. In the absence of a sprinkler system, the smoke detector is the key thing that they need to maintain. And the fire department also has a fire safety education unit that does a lot of outreach activity with seniors and other community groups about helping them either get or install fire safety directors, fire alarms, and or maintaining them. And so we do have a fairly active program to promote this, but it is a big city and there are a lot of people in it, and not everyone is paying attention to this particular issue.
Now, we appreciate all the great work that the fire department has been doing. I think hopefully with this discussion, because of this bill, that we can encourage property owners to really work together with FDNY to really promote safeties, fire safety, emergency in every building, especially these older buildings in our district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council member. Now we'll be calling on council member Rosenthal for a question. If any other council members have a question, please raise your hand, or else after this, we'll be moving on to the public testimony.
Wait, before we go to Councilmember Rosenthal, I just wanted to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Powers.
Time starts now.
Thank you. I heard Commissioner LaRocca state in her testimony that my bill about the party or whatever terraces would significantly burden DOB's inspection budget, and I respect that totally. If we could just put a pin in that for 1 second, can you speak to any problems that DOB inspectors have encountered with the with these terraces or small balconies? And in general, I would love feedback from both the fire department and Department of Buildings on this bill.
Certainly. So putting a pin in staffing considerations, certainly welcome the opportunity to talk more about what drove the bill, although you alluded to it in your previous question, council member. From our perspective, to your point about whether inspectors from the department have raised concerns, I have not heard. But again, we have property owners who already have an established requirement to maintain their building, which includes any fixtures on the exterior of a building, such as a fire escape, as well as the heightened workload for our buildings that are 6 stories or greater. where obviously local law 11 applies. So from our mind's eye, certainly any opportunity to talk to the council about ways we can improve the maintenance and safety of a building is one we would value. So I certainly would value that conversation.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions, we will now be moving on to public testimony. As a reminder, unlike in-person hearings where we call on a panel, we'll be calling on individuals on a one-by-one basis. Once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the sergeant at arms will set a timer and announce that you may begin. Your testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, I'm sorry. Today, first, we're going to be hearing from Joseph Condon, followed by Barika Williams, Albert Scott, and
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, everyone, committee members, committee chairs. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Joseph Condon. This testimony is provided on behalf of the Community Housing Improvement Program, which is an organization representing thousands of small and medium-sized rent-stabilized housing providers throughout New York City. We are focusing the testimony on Intro 1146B because it has the most severe impact on housing providers and their residents of all the bills being considered today. We do understand that safety is the #1 priority here, and we do agree with that goal. However, we do have some concerns with the lack of tools available right now to deal with the real life circumstances that will be forced upon owners and their tenants because of 1146B. In particular, the bill would turn buildings into construction sites. It would disrupt tenant lives for months, potentially requiring relocation of tenants and their families during that time. There are also other concerns. Cost of compliance is a major concern. Logistics of accessing tenant apartments is a major concern, especially if there are collier conditions or other types of conditions already existing in the apartment. And of course, just accomplishing the building-wide installation within the time frame. And on top of all that, this bill is being contemplated during an economic recession, the depths of which are still unknown. But just as an example of the disruption, you can look at the difficulties associated with a similar situation that occurs when having to install or repipe cooking gas lines throughout a building. In that situation, each apartment must be repiped, just like would be required under 1146B. In those situations, 6 months is a normal time frame. I just want to say thank you to the committee for considering comments, and we would be happy to work on the details of 1146B to limit disruption and dislocation of tenants and address all the logistical concerns as well as the cost concerns. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much for your testimony and being clear and concise with it. I think if everybody can do that, we can hear from the amount of people who have signed up to testify, which is a large number. So I think you've set a fairly decent precedent outside of going over just a little bit of how the testimony can be received in a way that's very productive for us to make a determination on continuing or not continuing with this bill. So thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Barika Williams, followed by Ann Heaney-Korchak, followed by Tanya Friedberg.
Time starts now.
And per Chair Cornegie, I'll try to keep it brief, so I'll skip some key pieces. I just want to thank the committees for having me here. My name is Barika Williams. I'm the executive.
Wait, Barika, we could barely hear you. I'm sorry.
You can't hear me? Okay. Is this any better?
Yeah, much better.
All right.
Please start our time over. Please start our time over. That was my fault.
No worries. My name is Barika Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, or ANHD, and I want to say thank you to Chair Cornegie, to Chair Borelli, and the members of the committee for having me here today to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of both ANHD and for our 80+ neighborhood-based affordable housing and equitable economic development organizations that we serve across New York City. And to hop right to the point, I'm specifically similarly speaking about the impact of intro 1146B. We understand, similar to the previous testimony, that the priority here is safety and security of tenants and residents, and very much understand and support that intent, but have serious concerns about the proposed bill's impact to specifically small homeowners, affordable housing stock, public housing, and generally the potential impact, the disparate impact for communities of color and immigrant communities. So specifically want to speak to the cost of affordable housing developers. So this is obviously the installation of sprinklers would potentially add a huge cost to eligible buildings. The bill doesn't address how those costs would be absorbed by affordable housing developers, which operate within the confines of government subsidy and government support. Normally and traditionally, our members come back to folks like the city, like HPD, in order to make large-scale infrastructure improvements and investments. And there are a number of programs, for example, the Green Housing Preservation Program, that are set up to be able to do these kind of infrastructure investments. And so absent some sort of capital pool of funds, it's not clear how affordable housing projects and developments would be able to absorb and handle these costs. This is prior to, but only exacerbated by, in light of COVID, where many of our buildings have faced
Time expired.
Okay, have faced cuts of up to 20% in their rent rolls. The two other things that I'll say is addressing access to credit for small homeowners and recognizing that it's specifically Black and Brown homeowners will not have access to credit to address this the same way. That our understanding is it is an eligible MCI expense, and that there also is no provision and it's not clear how NYCHA could comply with this bill. Thank you.
Wait, so Bariko, on behalf of ANHD, I felt like you had some recommendations to get us to a place of safety that didn't include what you're detailing as onerous kind of ways of implementation. If you could just take a minute to, I'm going to extend you the courtesy. I know you have a recommendation.
Yes. Yeah,
so, at least one recommendation.
So I think our recommendation would be that any sort of mandate around sprinklers would need to be paired with a pool of capital funds, both for small homeowners and small landlords who don't have the same access to credit, especially understanding that we know that this is going to hit Black and Brown homeowners, immigrant homeowners, and Black and Brown small businesses, which are small landlords, who are not going to be able to access those funds, let alone be able to afford it, but then likely not get the same credit access and recognition from banks and lenders. And then a pool of money as well for affordable housing landlords and property managers, so that they can then go and access a zero interest pool of funds to be able to make any modifications that are proposed. So we've just got to understand that the expectation that affordable housing projects are able to make any of these improvements without a pool of funds to support the implementation is highly unlikely and unrealistic.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for the recommendation.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to be hearing from Anne Heaney-Korchak, followed by Christopher Athinos, followed by Jan Lee.
Time starts now. Anne, you're on mute.
I apologize. Sorry. I'm a landlord to 20 tenants on the Upper West Side in District 6. I spoke to an engineer about installing sprinklers in each of our apartments, and he said it could cost me $20,000 per unit to do this work. The COVID crisis has exhausted all of our resources, and we simply cannot afford to do, work of this scope. But small building owners like myself, have lots of questions. Firstly, does DEP agree that we have the infrastructure to support sprinkler systems to all of these buildings? Are there enough licensed and qualified contractors to do this work in New York City? Does the DOB have enough staff to do the inspections in a timely manner? Will Landmarks allow me to install a water tank on my roof? Will APS be responsible for dealing with the tenant who has not left her apartment in 20 years and won't give us access to do this installation? Much of New York City's housing stock is old. Retrofitting the 120-year-old building that my family owns is near impossible to implement while the building is occupied. I offer this solution for fire safety. Let's increase the funding to the FDNY budget so that they have enough personnel, enough firehouses, and enough equipment to quickly respond to all of our calls. They are our greatest resource in protecting people and property. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you for your testimony. As it was said earlier, we're going to hear from stakeholders from the entire city of New York, whether it's homeowners, fire safety experts, advocates. And I think it's important to hear every single person's voice and not to mute that voice. And that's what these hearings are about. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Christopher Athenos, followed by Jan Lee, followed by Hal Dorfman.
Time starts now.
Hi, my name is Christopher Athenaeus. I'm a small property owner from Brooklyn, and I'm here to emphasize that and oppose 1146B because our buildings. I have a building that's built in 1850. There would be no way for us to feasibly and physically make such an installation. It's just impossible. I mean, it's a landmark building inside. We have very ornate, landmark plaster moldings that it would create such disruption to the tenants. I mean, it's not even a matter, cost is like astronomical, but even if you gave me the money to do it, we still would not be able to do it. It's not a matter of, of course it's a matter of money, but it's not even, for me, even if you gave it to me, we still would not be able to do it. I mean, I'm not being sarcastic, but you might as well just knock the building down and build up a new building. And for new construction, I can clearly see the need and the requirement to put in sprinklers. I mean, it makes sense. When we build new buildings, we make them energy efficient. We make them safer than the buildings that were built so many years ago. But, from just telling you from someone who has his boots on the ground, it's just not feasible. I have a larger building, 30 units that has solar panels on the roof. I talked to a plumber. He said you would need a water tank on the roof. My roof is full of solar panels. I don't know how I would put structurally. I don't think it would support additional weight, not to mention if we put a big tank on my roof, I wouldn't have any sun to save energy. I just think that you have to consider increasing the fire department budget. I know everyone likes to cut budgets when times are tough. Years ago, they cut the fire department budget, and when you reduce response times, that has an effect on fires. I mean, I think the best way to fight a fire is to have the experienced men and women of the
Time expired.
And I hope you consider expanding the fire department's budget. Thank you.
Chris, just for the record, no one wants to cut the budgets of our first responders. Nobody likes to do that.
I know, but they've done it before. I'm not saying this, maybe not this committee, but.
No, 100%. And I just had for both you and Ann, how many units in your buildings?
I have, my family owns and operates 9 buildings, about 145 units in Brooklyn.
What's the smaller height density of one of your smaller units?
I have buildings as small as 3 units and buildings that are 6 stories high.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Ann?
Yeah, we have 2 5-story brownstones on the Upper West Side. So there are 10 units in each building. So they would each exceed that, 40-foot threshold that you've set in the bill.
Right. So I'm just asking so that we as people that are listening can actually get a picture of what these units look like.
Yeah.
Right.
And what kind of density we're talking about, right? Yeah. So I'm not to put you on the spot, but just so we can.
Yes.
Yeah. Most of them are brownstones. The highest one for me is the 6-story building. And I apologize if I sound a little like fire in my voice or fire in my belly, but I'm just speaking from the heart.
No, thank you, Christopher, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to be hearing from Jan Lee, followed by Hal Dorfman, followed by Peter Varselonen.
Time starts now.
Thank you to both of the chairs. Chair Borelli, you hit so many high points on this, and so glad that you are hitting those high points because it's the same questions that we have. And I want to thank Councilmember Chin for having an ear, listening to the people in her district, particularly small property owners and certainly our seniors. It's so important. I am a third generation property owner. We have owned 2 tenement buildings in Chinatown for going on 96 years. We have provided excellent service to our low income, 100% rent stabilized tenants. And it is through that lens I want to express to you, it is the spirit of your 1146B is great. We all want to preserve life. We all want to extend the lives of our tenants and make sure that they are comfortable and safe, as we have done for 96 years. So it makes sense to ask us first, and it's disappointed that since 2018, small property owners haven't been consulted about this in any organized way. With that said, relocation stress syndrome is a real thing, and I urge the council to really look into relocation stress syndrome and how that actually can diminish and kill many more people than what your bill is designed to do. What it purports to do is preserve life. If we turn our tenants' lives upside down as they're trying to get their lives back on track as we emerge from COVID-19, it is simply not fair. And I'm insulted that the only thing that the Chair Garodchik could say is maybe we can give you a loan. We don't want more loans. We are in debt. You don't understand. We cannot be thrust further into debt as we emerge from COVID-19, and many of us don't qualify for loans. So please don't insult us by saying that the best you can do is give us loans. So with that said, just like Christopher, you can hear in my voice, I have fire in my voice because we absolutely cannot bear the responsibility. Don't take a fire hose approach to something that really should be done with surgical precision. We cannot drop this bomb on all of New York City, expecting everybody to recover healthily with bills like this. So please reconsider and please withdraw this bill permanently. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Hal Dorfman, followed by Peter Barcelonen, followed by Kate Elvin Yale.
Time starts now.
Yes, my name is Hal Dorfman. I am a registered architect, and it's my duty to implement the laws that the City Council passes. I would like to say that to save a life is to save a world. But this bill, 1146B, is designed not to do that. It's designed with the most lowest amount of deaths, as reported by Chief Hogan, 64 in 2019. We're at the safest point in our history in terms of fire safety. We have the most professional full-time fire department of any city in the country. Our buildings are designed to be safe from the 38 code, the 68 code, and now with the 2008 code, requiring all buildings except 1 and 2 family houses to be fully sprinklered. We have laws that have just been implemented in 2018, Local Law 113, which requires all new photoelectric smoke detectors be installed. These smoke detectors can last from 7 to 10 years and have proven to provide the most safety for people to alert them. The other thing I must say is that as a person who has to read these laws that are implemented, it's important to create an education campaign for not just architects, engineers, but everyone. All the people, all the tenants need to know what their responsibility is. You make us put cards on the inside of apartments. Also, I am a landlord of a 43-foot high building with 8 tenants that has fire-rated doors and 12-inch masonry walls in the hallway. It is a safe building, has existed for over 100 years, and nobody has died in that building. I thank you very much, but I believe that intro 1146 should be tabled and should not continue. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Dorfman, and thank you for your expert testimony. We hope to hear from architects today, so thank you for chiming in.
If you ever need me to participate in a committee, I have participated as an industry advisory representative to the New York City Department of Buildings for the last 33 years, and I'm a past president of the New York Society of Architects. And my society wrote the code since 1916 before they were digitized and taken over by the building department and now the IBC. So I'm only happy to participate in committees of the city council. I'm available anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorfman. Somebody from my office will reach out so we can be in contact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Peter Vasalona, followed by Kate Elvin Yale, followed by Avi G.
Time starts now.
Hi, my name is Peter Vasalona. I'm a New York State licensed professional engineer and principal of Rand Engineering and Architecture. I'm also serve on the board of Council of New York Cooperatives and Condominiums. I'm speaking today to voice opposition to intro number 1146B. For all unit owners, the disruptive impact to the interior of their apartments would just be overwhelming. Ceilings would need to be open to permit installation of new sprinkler piping and heads, and drop ceilings would need to be added where none exist. Ceiling lights, fans, plumbing system, piping, and mechanical vents would need to be relocated or removed in connection with this work. Residents may even need to vacate their apartments depending on the extent of these alterations. In addition, a new sprinkler system would require extensive infrastructure improvements. The construction requirements for high-rise residential buildings, those are greater than 125 feet, are frankly staggering. A dedicated fire or combined service would be needed in buildings, along with the new backflow prevention and metering equipment. The water storage tanks atop older residential buildings are just too small and usually only have a 3,500 gallon fire standpipe reserve. Those would need to be replaced with 15,000 gallon tanks or higher. The steel supports for those tanks are inadequate and would need to be enlarged or supplemented. Many buildings require sprinkler booster pumps to increase pressure. Others require fire alarm. All sprinkler system upgrades require fire alarm notification. So the fire alarm system in the building, if one even exists, would have to be upgraded or otherwise installed. There's also large electrical requirements for fire pumps, and some actually require emergency power generation. Although the installation of sprinklers throughout all residential buildings is well intentioned, the use of sprinklers should not be seen as a fail-safe for preventing civilian deaths, injury, or damage that can occur in a fire, which are already at historic lows. You know, the use of fire-rated construction, prevalence and effectiveness of smoke and alarm detection devices, rapid fire department response times, the adoption of the 2008 code, as Hal mentioned, all those have really helped to keep these numbers low. For these reasons, we ask to strongly reconsider the bill in its entirety, and thank you very much for allowing to express this viewpoint.
So Mr. Barcelona,
Barcelona, yes.
Barcelona, you gave a litany of things that would have to happen for effectively to add a sprinkler system. You got a price tag for that?
This is clearly in the upper six figures for most buildings that are considered high-rise. For lower-rise buildings, meaning ones that are 6 stories or less, you're looking at probably about $500,000, depending on, let's say, up to about 40 to 50,000 square feet. So it's a significant cost investment beside all the things that everyone talked about in terms of disruption. We just can't find a real practical way to do this without requiring most tenants to leave their apartments.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to be hearing from Avi G, followed by Lyric Thompson, followed by Christopher Rodello.
Time starts now. Not sure Abby's on.
Okay, sorry about that. Next, we're going to hear from Kate Elvin Yale, followed by Avi G, followed by Lyric Thompson.
Time starts now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for holding this hearing. We oppose intro 1146B because the expense and disruption of this bill would cause it's not in the best interest of our tenants. We've owned our building for 35 years. We know everybody who lives there. And as Councilwoman Chen and the fire department said earlier, tenant education is key. We inspect our apartments with our tenants when they take occupancy and every single year. We make sure they know doors have to be closed. We make sure that they know the batteries need to be in their smoke detectors. We go over the information on the back of the door to make sure they understand how to leave the building. We look at the fire escape with them and make sure there's no bars on the windows. We don't allow smoking in the building, and we don't allow candles in the building. When we see overloaded sockets, we work with the tenant to upgrade the wiring and to put in circuit breakers where there were none before. We have battery lights in the hallways to make sure if a system goes out or there's a fire or it's night, people can find their way out because they're supported by the batteries. The stairways are metal. There's multiple exit points for our 21 tenants. They can easily walk over our roof to the neighboring roofs. The fire department has easy access to our 50-foot tall building. The proposed sprinkler bill would cost us $500,000. That's more than our annual rent roll, and it would necessitate cutting back on many of the services we try to provide our tenants. In particular, we would have to get rid of our super, who is there on site every single day to make sure everything is running smoothly and properly, that the stairs are clear, that there's no clutter, that we know every problem that's going on to keep our tenants safe.
Time expired.
Okay, one last thing. Funding for the sprinklers takes away from what tenants are looking for today, which is washers, dryers, dishwashers. In time of COVID, they need adequate wiring. We need to put our money into the services tenants need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alvin, for your testimony.
Thank you. Next, we're going to be hearing from Avi G, followed by Lyric Thompson, followed by Christopher Widello.
Time starts now.
I'm not Avi. I was just logging in to see the movie, to see the to just be a part of the Zoom. Hello? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Committee counsel?
Yeah, I'm just Devon Nash. I'm in a shelter right now. I've been in the shelter system for like 3 years, and I have yet to get a voucher. And it costs like $6,391 a month, and I'm like, all I need is like $2,500 for rent, and I have like this breakdown of how much it actually costs, and I was like, can someone help me? My name is Devon Nash. My email is devonenash@gmail.com. And I'm in the family shelter system with my nephew, Errol Smith. So if anyone can reach out to me and help me, would be very well appreciated. Thank you very much. And the sprinkler systems are a good idea because some of these old buildings, they have older people in them and they can't get downstairs really fast. And so with the sprinklers in there, it kind of like diminishes the fire because like a lot of old people hoard a lot of things. And so this way you can kind of like get in there and clean out the apartments and stuff like that. You know, just a suggestion. Have a great day, people.
Mr. Nash, somebody from my office will reach out to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Now we're going to be hearing from Avi Gross, followed by Lyric Thompson, followed by Christopher Widello.
Time starts now.
Are you there? Okay. Sorry. Next, we're going to be moving on to Lyric Thompson, followed by Christopher Widello.
Time starts now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lyric Thompson. Hello, Councilmember Cornegy. Hello, Councilmember Borelli, who's on Facebook. I'm here to speak about another aspect of fire safety, and that is fire-rated egress doors. the entrance doors of multiple dwellings are supposed to be in compliance with NFPA 80. Now, HPD is the agency responsible for enforcing this standard. It's DOB standard, but HPD is responsible for enforcing it. That would be multiple dwelling 50A. Unfortunately, HPD seems to not know these standards. We had over 300 inspections on our door before I realized that the door was not fire rated. HPD came out, wrote and removed violations, and that defective door hardware had to be removed by the fire department before it burned our building to the ground. Now, I cannot help but think that at least one of those 300 inspectors should have noticed that this door was not up to the basic safety standard. So, Councilmember Cornegy, my question to you, sir, is, are we going to wait until someone dies from this, or will you take it upon yourself to call HPD and Anne Marie Santiago into your chamber and ask why 300 inspections later, I'm still fighting with HPD over the standards of a fire rated door? I did not come up with these standards. They were written down in code. I could forward them to her. However, nothing seems, I mean, she just blows it off like it doesn't matter. Now, I'm lucky that the two tenants that caught that door malfunction notified us and then notified the fire department before somebody got hurt. I would rather somebody not have to die before this issue is addressed. So what say you, sir?
I will call the commissioner, but I don't actually have a chamber to call her into, but I will call her and make her aware that we know that as we're discussing fire safety, that there are some deficiencies in tenants. So I will do that.
I sent you 4 years of photos that clearly document that HPD does not know these standards. So perhaps we could also, in addition to having a conversation with Ms. Santiago, ask the commissioner of DOB, Commissioner LaRocca, if she would be willing to have a training class so that these inspectors are educated with regard to the standards they're supposed to enforce. Can we do that too?
I'm sorry, yes, as safety obviously is a priority as evidenced by this hearing, I will absolutely do that. And thank you, Lyric, for being such an advocate, not just for people in your building, but for people in the system who need advocacy. Thank you.
Well, I'm trying, and I'm still waiting to hear from you, by the way.
Yeah, we'll be reaching. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lyric.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Christopher Wadello, followed by Kelly Farrell, followed by Laura Rothrock.
Time starts now.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Cornegy. My name is Chris Wadello. I am the Director of External Affairs for the New York State Association for Affordable Housing, otherwise known as NYSAFA. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity to provide the following comments on bills being heard by the committee today. We're the trade association. NYSAFA is a trade association for New York's affordable housing industry with nearly 400 members, including developers, lenders, investors, attorneys, contractors, architects, all those that are active in the financing, construction, and operation of affordable housing. While fire safety is an important priority in development, rehab, and preservation work, and building management, Intro 1146B's approach of mandating sprinkler systems in all residential buildings over 40 feet is infeasible. The costs associated with the piping, water service, and with making space for the equipment in buildings that weren't designed to include the space are astronomical. This would not be possible for non-for-profits and small owners of the existing older affordable housing stock. To comply would mean we need to dig up and install infrastructure in the streets and sidewalks and burden the already very challenged DEP infrastructure. The construction work at both the street level and in the buildings would be incredibly disruptive to tenants as well. Additionally, older buildings would will more commonly have asbestos and lead challenges, which is a safety concern and additional costs for remediation. As an apparently MCI eligible expense, there is also the potential for some of these costs to be passed through to tenants, which is inconceivable given the current environment. Finally, affordable housing building owners cannot bear the cost of this measure. However, well-intentioned this legislation is. The smaller and nonprofit owners are simply trying to stay afloat during the COVID crisis, which has been devastating in terms of reduced rent rolls and increased maintenance and utility costs. The council should be focused on how to reduce the costs to providers of affordable housing and not—
Time expired.
Thanks very much for your time and consideration.
Christopher, do you have any recommendations on behalf of NYSAFA?
I would be happy to send some your way if I can send them to you at a later time. Happy
Absolutely.
to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Kelly Farrell, followed by Laura Rothrock.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Farrell, and I'm from the Rent Stabilization Association, which is a real estate group that represents 25,000 diverse owners and managers who collectively manage over 1 million units of housing in every neighborhood and community throughout the city. We're here today to speak in opposition to Intro 1146B, the sprinkler bill. I also want to note that we've submitted testimony on the number of other bills, most notably in support of 2151A, but we're going to use our time today to speak in opposition to this bill. As you've heard from a number of owners so far today, this bill would create an incredible logistical and financial burden on owners throughout the city. Obviously, there's going to be some impacts on tenants and the disruption in their lives, the dangers, the exposure to the lead paint and masonry and asbestos that the work would inflict upon them, and then potentially months-long disruption, movement going elsewhere. But given what's going on in the city at this time, it really is the precarious state of real estate, this measure, the financial hardships, vacancies are at an all-time high, rent collections at an all-time low. The Housing Instability Tenant Protection Act has created an inability to recoup any of these costs, and along with the Climate Mobilization Act also, that's now requiring rent stabilized tenants, buildings to engage in other costly measures. It's just, there's just no way that this is a feasible request of owners throughout the city. The residential estimates and the costs are just so high that there's just no way that it's feasible for sprinkler retrofits to be undertaken in residential situations at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell, for your testimony.
Thank you. And as a reminder, there's no need to raise your hand. We will be calling on everyone who is registered. Next, we'll be hearing from Laura Rothrock, followed by Marianne Rothman, followed by Melissa Barber.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Cornegy and members of the New York City Council. My name is Laura Rothrock, and I'm providing testimony on behalf of the New York Coalition of Code Consultants, also known as NYCCC. NYCCC is a nonprofit trade organization whose members specialize in securing construction and development approvals from municipal agencies, as well as building code and zoning consultant. I'm testifying today in support of Intro 1917, a different topic than has been discussed so far, which allows for self-certification for certain work after the issuance of a work without a permit violation. We applaud Councilmember Cornegy for introducing this bill to amend Local Law 158, which takes away the ability for an applicant to self-certify construction work and related documents for 1 year if there was a work without a permit violation issued on any part of that building. NYCCC supports the intention of Local Law 158, which was to protect residential tenants from unsafe conditions and harassment. However, the law has had unintended consequences, which Intro 1917 corrects. Self-certification is an important tool for commercial tenants and for the Department of Buildings because it allows licensed professionals to expedite the process of obtaining plan approvals without compromising safety or putting additional strain on DOB resources. This bill is particularly important for commercial tenants who are fitting out their leased spaces. Commercial tenants should not have to be penalized for violations caused by other tenants in the same building and should not have to float their businesses for an extended period of time while they await approval to fit out their spaces. In summary, Intro 1917 provides a practical solution to remove unfair burdens on businesses, and we hope this committee will vote in favor of the bill. We thank you for your consideration.
Laura, thank you so much for your testimony and for reminding me that there were actually other bills on the agenda, some of which don't cause such a stir and uproar. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Mary Ann Rothman, followed by Melissa Barber.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Ann Rothman, and I thank you for this opportunity to add my voice to the chorus in opposition to Intro 1146B. I'm the Executive Director of the Council of New York Cooperatives and Condominiums, which is a membership organization where more than 170,000 New York families make their homes. And our member buildings span the full economic spectrum, from very modest income restricted housing to solid middle class apartment complexes and upscale dwellings. I point out that in housing co-ops and condominiums, everyone is both a tenant and a landlord. And therefore we are subject to all of the issues that have already been raised and which I will continue to raise. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit our members hard. People have lost their livelihoods, their loved ones, their neighbors, colleagues, workers, friends. Resources are strained, but New York property taxes have reached high records, and buildings must still comply with the FISP program of facade inspection, the carbon reducing mandates of Local Law 97, and with many more requirements of city and state. I would hope that Intro 114B would not become one of those requirements. Most of the buildings affected by this legislation are non-combustible buildings, and history has shown the ability of FDNY to respond quickly and to control fires within these apartments and save lives. Sprinklers are not a panacea, as they can be slow and less effective against some fires. Our colleague Peter Barcelona has detailed for you the complexity of installing sprinklers and their astronomical costs. Mandating this tremendous capital expenditure will divert scarce funds and attention from the other urgent goals in our city. Please do not pass this bill. Thank you for this opportunity to express our views.
Thank you, Ms. Rothman. Could you please just state your organization again for the record?
It's called the Council of New York Cooperatives and Condominiums, and we are submitting written testimony with comments on more of the bills.
Thank you. Do you have any recommendations at this time from your organization?
Well, I'm pleased with a lot of the recommendations I've heard already. Education is vitally important. It was a pleasure to see Julian Basil here. He has been a speaker at many of our conferences, helping us educate our members about all sorts of safety precautions. You'll hear from another of my colleagues about possibly requiring, when a kitchen renovation is done, possibly requiring a sprinkler retrofit in the kitchen that could be small enough to be based on the domestic water system, and kitchens are the source of a tremendous percentage of fires. So that's certainly worth considering.
So this is the reason that I'm asking recommendations, because some of them make absolute sense and could be an alternative to the bill, and it could actually cover the safety concerns that we as a council and me as a chair have, but not disproportionately negatively impact our affordable housing stock and or our small building operators. So thank you for that. And we'll be taking all of these recommendations, compiling them, and then reviewing them just for the record.
Thank you. This has been a fascinating hearing. I thank you for how well you're running it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll be hearing from Melissa Barber, followed by Michael Wolf, followed by Nathan Fishman.
Time starts now.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Barber. I wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak today. I work with the Mechanical Contractors Association with New York City licensed fire sprinkler contractors who employ Local 638 steam fitter labor. I've worked for the MCA for over 20 years, and I've been an advocate for fire sprinkler protection for that time. And I've seen the majority of fire sprinkler legislation be driven unfortunately, by tragedy. The need for fire sprinklers still is clear. Last week, we had a 10-year-old boy critically injured when a fire broke out in Marble Hill. On November 22nd, 2 lives were lost in a building in Washington Heights. And in October, a 5-year-old boy died of smoke inhalation. some of the reason for this is our fires grow hotter and faster than they used to. Flashover is within 4 minutes usually, and the FDNY response time, according to my last records, and I don't want to contradict, if I'm wrong, was approximately 5 minutes. The FDNY does do an amazing job. We just think sprinklers would be an additional tool. And I want to be cognizant of everything everyone said today. I think there's really important points being made. I just like to be part. I don't think that the bill should be completely disregarded, because I think there's some things that we could look at further in terms of height, type of construction of building, configurations, available water supply, the type of pipe, is a fire pump needed? So I just think we need to be looking at properties. We need to be looking at the code changes and coming together in a response that does make our residential apartment buildings safer, and is cognizant of all, to develop a policy and plan that will result in a safer city.
Thank you, Melissa. And that's kind of, if I'm not mistaken, Barry, who was the bill's original prime sponsor, was where the place that he came from, which was really about safety. So thank you for your perspective, and also thank you for your expert testimony in this case. I'd
like to send you some, some statistics and some case studies on some retrofit around the country, and in particular Philadelphia, looking at the cost and the different types of buildings too, if that'd be okay.
No, that would be, we would like to take in as much information as we possibly can today as the hearing chair, in an effort to get to a place that, again, doesn't, put safety as a premium and a priority, but doesn't disproportionately negatively impact.
Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention, and I hope everyone listening is cognizant of, to please advocate also. There are things like the Public Housing Fire Safety Act that Max Rose and Peter King, a bipartisan federal legislation that would provide grants for fire sprinkler protection. There's a bill in New York State legislature for tax incentives, given obviously the fiscal crisis we're in. I'm not, I'm aware of that. But I think there are things people should be, I think there are programs and hopefully financing that we can go along with this.
Thank you, Melissa. Jan, I see you shaking your head vehemently. Unfortunately, this is not a forum for debate. But I can see that both Christopher and Jan and Ann are ready for a spirited debate. Unfortunately, that won't take place. Honestly, thank you all for your perspectives, and thank you for your expert opinion on this and expert testimony. Thank you.
I believe Councilmember Grodenchik had his hand raised for a question.
Yes, please, Barry.
Time starts now.
I'm listening intently to everybody, and I'm going to wait, I think, until the end of the hearing. And I certainly appreciate the comments of many people, some of whom I know very well, some of whom I'm meeting for the first time today. But I think I'm going to wait, Mr. Chairman, until we're done to talk further. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Michael Wolf, followed by Nathan Fishman.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, council members. I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving and wish to thank all council members for allowing me to present to you today. My name is Michael Wolf. I'm the president of Midborough Management, a full-service management firm representing over 15,000 cooperative condominium and rental apartments in New York City for almost 4 decades. In addition, I'm the chair of the Real Estate Board of New York's Residential Management Council and a member of the board of the Council of New York Cooperatives and Condominiums. Prior to the pandemic, I met with council member Barry Grodenchik to discuss this very issue and appreciate his willingness to hear all sides. The primary method of fire protection during the majority of the 1900s focused on passive fire protection using fire barriers, fire-rated walls, floors, and ceilings that typically divide a building into areas for fire control. Therefore, we do have a system in place. Suggesting that all buildings are in one bucket is not the correct approach. The New York City Fire Department advises residents in non-combustible buildings to remain in their apartments unless the fire is in their apartment. Clearly, fire spread is not a major concern in such type of construction. The city also mandates smoke and carbon monoxide detectors and signage in each dwelling unit, rightfully so, alerting residents of any smoke or fire condition quickly. Most home fires begin in the kitchen. I had suggested to the councilman during our meeting that adding a sprinkler head during a kitchen renovation is a possibility if the head could be supplied through the domestic system, not requiring a new water line that would add unnecessary cost, demolition, and restoration. Therefore, little by little, you'd be retrofitting each kitchen in every apartment in the city. The loss of life is one too many. However, to suggest retrofitting all buildings over 40 feet tall with sprinklers is not realistic for many reasons. We would be talking about millions of dollars in a particular building, including destroying interior finishes that may not be able to be replicated. A 2029 deadline exasperates the burden of Local Law 97, the Climate Mobilization Act that added penalties for energy use that is out of control for so many.
Time expired.
The pandemic has resulted in extreme financial hardship for so many, with residents leaving New York and many not returning. The suggested cost of action at 1146 would add to the extreme cost of living in New York City and reduce its appeal even further. Projected projects cost and disruption, cutting into walls and ceilings to hang pipe, is always disruptive and dirty. When asbestos and lead may be involved, the hazard makes work much more complicated and residents will have to relocate. By New York City code, residents are advised of safety plans and procedures. We all share the same goal of keeping our neighbors safe, but at what cost? Let us find ways to provide relief, not additional burden. Thank you all for your time, and most importantly, stay well.
Michael, thank you so much. Your proposal, which is the second time we heard, I think we heard it from Melissa first, she beat you to it, of the sprinklers in retrofitted kitchens. In order to get to the place that the bill suggests that we get, how long do you think it would take?
It would
how many years do you think it would? We're talking 10, 15, 20 years?
It'll be multiple decades at that rate. The problem is putting in a new water line, new pump system, new tank. But if there was a way to tap into an existing rise or a branch line, which is very easy during a kitchen renovation, adding a sprinkler head to a kitchen in a strategically located place, probably in the vicinity of the stove, would not be a heavy lift or a costly exercise at all.
And in your proposal, not mandating that to be done immediately, only when there are renovations scheduled in kitchens.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Before we call on our next panelist, I'd like to call on Councilmember Grodenchik.
Time starts now.
I didn't raise my hand. If it was still raised, I'm sorry, but or it was unraised. So I'm still here, but I like that sprinkler head idea, but we'll talk later. Thank you.
I was getting ready to say, Barry, make up your mind. Either you want in or you want out.
No, I'm all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
Okay, next we're going to be calling on Nathan Fishman, followed by Neil Davidowitz, followed by Richard Flatow.
Time starts now.
Hi, my name is Nathan Fishman. I'm an owner and property manager for rent stabilized apartments in Upper Manhattan and the Bronx. The buildings we run are small 5-story walk-ups and 6-story buildings. We manage clean properties with no housing violations and have excellent relationships with our tenants. We have a vested interest in keeping fires out of our buildings. We understand that public safety is of utmost importance and that fire prevention is important to protect our tenants. With that being said, I do not think the proposed sprinkler law, Intro 1146B, would be a good idea. The magnitude of disruption that the project would cause to the tenants would be enormous. The job of installing large water pipes inside of my existing tenants' apartments would simply bother and infuriate my tenants. From my experience, tenants want to be left alone. They want to quietly enjoy their homes with good heat and proper services. The proposed sprinkler law would bring plumbers and construction contractors into their homes. The violent breaking of walls and ceilings, the dust and dirt it would create in these small areas would be terrible. This is a very dirty job. Furthermore, the exposure to lead when you break open the walls and the possible asbestos concerns would be very real. In fact, I believe that many tenants wouldn't even let us in. They never asked for this work to be done and simply do not want to be bothered. If you actually polled the tenancy, I believe they would be very much against such intrusion. They are hardworking people and families and would not appreciate the mess and major inconvenience that would be forced upon them. Air contamination and overall environmental disruption are almost required to accomplish this job. I believe that you are sacrificing both the mental and physical health of the tenants. Additionally and secondarily, the cost of such work to landlords would be larger than any other unfunded mandate ever passed by this council. Estimated at $20,000 per apartment, the cost of a retrofit for a 25-unit building would be $500,000. Small landlords can simply not afford this type of major expense. There are other less intrusive ways to accomplish fire safety, like fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, fire blankets, and fire education. They all make much more sense. These are the type of things I have in my own home to protect my own family. I ask that you listen to my testimony and consider the tenants and the mess you will make of their homes. Again, speak to them as I do, and know that they just want to be left alone to enjoy their space and their families. Thank you.
Nathan, thank you so much for your testimony. You mentioned that this is a dirty job. You meant the job of installing sprinklers, not of being a council member, correct?
Of the job of the installation work of the sprinklers obviously is a very dirty job.
Yeah, just checking. Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call on Neil Davidowitz, followed by Richard Sato.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Carnegie and Borelli. I appreciate the opportunity to talk before you. My name is Neil Davidowitz, and I'm president of Orsett, New York, a management firm that currently manages 170 residential buildings encompassing 17,000 apartments, the majority being New York City co-ops and condominiums. The buildings are located in all 5 boroughs. I also serve on the board of several co-op buildings. I'm speaking today to voice strenuous opposition to 1146B. I come to you on behalf of a multitude of my clients who have asked me to share their concern, actually their distress, over this proposed bill. I represent many middle-class New Yorkers who understand the astronomical implications of 1146. New Yorkers who are concerned that this bill, coupled with the dire economic situation in this city, will force the possible sale of their homes or the relocation of them outside of this city. The bill would require major structural and non-structural changes to both building infrastructure and to individual apartments. My clients will have to bear both of those costs. They will be required to pay their pro rata share of huge assessments to effectuate the building component of construction, and they'll have to bear 100% of the cost of the work in their apartments. That is beyond onerous. The fundamental question is this necessary to protect New Yorkers in apartment buildings, and are there alternatives to this proposal? I respectfully say it is not necessary, and there are alternatives. Although I respect the intent of the proposition, we need to look beyond it. The vast majority of my portfolio consists of fire-rated buildings. We've installed smoke and fire alarm systems, educated residents on fire prevention, and have detailed safety and evacuation protocols. In addition, we have also made or are planning infrastructure improvements to ameliorate the risk of fires. Specifically, upgrades to electrical systems, both within the buildings and apartments, have diminished the risk of fire. Legislation eliminating smoking in common areas, coupled with co-ops and condominiums that are now amending their governing documents to create completely non-smoking buildings, will also diminish the significant cause of structural fires. Let us work together to continue to make our buildings safer and reduce fatalities without adding overwhelming financial and emotional burdens on our citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Mr. Davidowitz, thank you for your testimony. Are there recommendations that you have with that many units? Are you hearing from tenants about safety, about fire safety and those kinds of things? And if so, what are your recommendations? That's a very large portfolio. So, I'm wondering.
Yes, Chairman, we're hearing my suggestions, and I am hearing from my client base all the time. As has been said by many before me, you can't stress enough education. We have actually, and you can't commend the Fire Department of New York, and I can't commend them enough. We have basically held in so many buildings, they will come for free, and we have had informational meetings of unit owners and shareholders where the FDNY has articulated details about safety in apartments, safety in buildings, establishing protocols, great education. We've initiated inspection by building staff, whether it's handymen or superintendents, that can access apartments to ascertain if there are any visible dangerous conditions. People, too many plugs in an outlet, extension cords, over kitchens that are, you're putting too much, there's too much amperage on a single outlet. That kind of inspection will get tremendous amount of assistance. Upgrading, we find that many fires may be electrical based. Improving the electrical system in the building and looking to improve panels. Those are some recommendations I have that I think can be done without the kind of economic stress that this bill would put on both the dollars and possibly the vacating of individuals from apartments.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Davidowitz.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we're going to be hearing from Richard Flatow, followed by Robert Altman, followed by Joanna Wong.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, council members and members of the public. Chair Cornegy and Chair Borelli, thank you for allowing me to testify today regarding Intro 1146B. My name is Richard Flatow, and I'm the chairperson of Community Board 3, Brooklyn, which encompasses the neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant and has one of the highest concentrations of late 19th and early 20th century brownstone row houses in the city. Intro 1146B, requiring sprinkler systems for all residential buildings more than 40 feet in height, would be quite damaging to brownstoners in my community, particularly those on fixed incomes. As such, as with many others before me, I joined the chorus in opposition to this bill. A Greek philosopher is credited with the phrase primum non nocere, meaning first, do no harm. That is the Hippocratic oath that medical doctors take and which is incorporated into their training and practice. The city council would be wise to follow that ancient advice. Unfortunately, 1146B violates that dictum in many ways. Since time is so short, I'll just mention the exorbitant costs and the disruption. In terms of costs for typical property owners in my community, numbers I'm hearing is $50,000 to $100,000 for a typical 4-story row house, which would be subject to that bill. And with the disruption, both tenants and landlords, because many landlords live in those small buildings, would be displaced due to the construction. I'm just going to offer a few recommendations. One would be to explore increasing the minimum height from 40 to 60 feet. A second would be to consider incentives, financial incentives, including income tax credits, property tax abatements, and loan and grant programs. Since time's expired, I'll just mention the last one. The council should work with the federal U.S. Fire Administration to figure out ways to bring down the cost of retrofitted sprinkler systems for residential buildings.
Thank you so much, Mr. Flatow, the chair of Community Board 3, my community board. And I had no idea how you would possibly weave in Greek philosophy in this instance, but you found a way to do that. So for that, you should be given credit alone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Kingsley, counsel to the Fire Committee. I'll be taking over for this portion of the hearing. Up next, we will be hearing testimony from Robert Altman, followed by Joanna Wong. Mr. Altman, you can go ahead.
Time starts now. Mr. Altman, you're on mute.
Am I off mute now?
You're good now.
Good, thank you. You have my written comments. I don't feel a need to go further on those right now. However, there was some recommendations that came in from membership after I submitted the testimony, so I did want to include them. First, group R3 building should be exempt from the proposal, any of the proposals. That consists of 1 and 2 family homes. There are already particular provisions that will take care of the fire safety in those buildings that are sufficient. So we believe no matter what, those 1 and 2 family homes should be excluded. Second, I would urge some caution on everybody sitting there and saying, well, when they retrofit, when you renovate the kitchen, that if you can tap into a domestic water line, this still is a tremendous expense. And I will tell you flat out right now, if you want to talk about safety, there are a number of people who will do a kitchen renovation without a permit. And that's probably just about equal to, because it's so under the radar, that that I would estimate that a high percentage do not, in fact, go file for a permit. And I generally don't think DOB is out there ticketing these 1, 2, family homes, or if it's in a co-op or such. A lot of this work gets done without a permit. And for those who do use a permit, by forcing them to put in that sprinkler system and taking on the additional cost, they may say the hell with it, and in fact decide not to go get a permit. And so what you have in there is that there are particular things such as gas hookups and such, which probably should get done with a permit and should in fact be inspected.
Time expired.
That you want those to actually get reviewed, because that's where you're going to have most of your problems with fire.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Altman. So I noticed that your professional expertise extends past just being an attorney. Could you explain the other portion of your expertise?
My expertise goes past being an attorney.
Oh, it has Robert Altman, Esquire, PLLC.
Right. I'm an attorney, and PLLC is the professional limited liability company. So that discusses what my, that's the corporate name of the law practice.
I just want to make sure that I'm giving you total credit for not only your opinion, but based in some level of expertise.
I'm only, in fact, commenting on what my membership has told me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for representing your membership and doing a good job at it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, wait, and Mr. Altman, you said that your testimony had been submitted, though, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cornegy. Next, we will hear testimony from Joanna Wong, followed by Jules Feynman and the HDFC Coalition.
Time starts now.
Thank you to everyone here for taking the time today to let me share my concerns with Intro 1146B Sprinkler Bill. My family operates a pre-war walk-up building in Lower Manhattan. Building safety is our #1 concern. Inside the building on a daily basis includes myself, my loved ones, residential and commercial tenants whom we've known for decades, our own staff and vendors. No one cares more about safety inside the building than my family and me. But in the 40 plus years of operating the building, Intro 1146B would be the most intrusive and most disruptive thing we would be asking our tenants to live and work through. The entire building, from the basement to the roof, every floor, every room, in every apartment would turn into a construction zone for several years. Not only would it turn into a construction zone, but it would be a construction zone in which residents would have to live through. If anyone has ever had a simple leak in his or her apartment, then you have a taste of how disruptive it can be as a resident. You needed to move your schedule around to give access to the plumber. Your furniture and belongings had to be moved, assuming there was somewhere to move it to. Walls, floors, ceilings had to be opened up. No matter how hard you try to isolate and mitigate, dust travels. After the plumbing work is done, then the contractor has to come in to sheetrock, patch, and paint. Reimagine that same experience, multiply that by 100. Instead of working on one small area, imagine the scope of work requiring water lines being installed throughout the entire apartment, throughout the entire building. Virtually every wall, floor, and ceiling throughout the entire building would have to be opened up and then restored. This is what Intro 1146B is asking all New Yorker residents to endure. As someone who deals with residents on a daily basis, and as the person who would be responsible for implementing this, I believe this proposal is the wrong solution. I don't want an extension of time. I don't want financing.
Time expired.
I plead with all of you to terminate this bill and explore less intrusive, less disruptive, less expensive fire prevention options. I would like to end by asking the FDNY a question for their opinion, because I truly just don't know the answer, but I wanted to know what their thoughts are on fire safety blankets and if they think that is an effective tool to preventing fires.
Joanna, I don't know if we still have the FDNY with us, but I will try to field that question and get back to you with it. But I think they're no longer here. That's actually a great question, and I'd like to know the answer as well.
Okay, thank you. And then also, I've been trying to get a meeting with you too also, Chair Cornegy, so I will send a follow-up, but staff, taking this opportunity to let you know.
Staff is on this call, so we'll make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Jules Feynman, apologies, followed by the HDFC Coalition.
Time starts now.
Yes, thank you very much. I am a member of the HDFC Coalition, but I'm speaking as a board member of a small HDFC on the border of the Upper East Side in East Harlem. We actually have sprinklers, but I agree with the HDFC Coalition's stance that of the thousands of HDFC buildings and I believe 10,000s of tenants, they can't afford this. Okay, and especially I'm staring at this report here that says there are fines of up to $10,000 a day. I don't know about this issue with the kitchen upgrades, but I highly recommend the education aspect, and I would urge you to speak with the fire department and possibly come up, especially during these times of COVID when we can't do face-to-face training, that maybe we can have some very simple, quick, and well-produced videos that can be distributed all across the city through YouTube or wherever, saying this is how you deal with a fire in your apartment. First of all, you don't overload your apartment with extension cords. Don't smoke. Don't put cigarettes in bed. Don't leave the door open if there is a fire. Get a kitchen fire extinguisher and learn how to use it. All these things can be taught very quickly and very easily right now. And I thank you for your attention to this. And thank you for the time to speak.
Thank you for your testimony. Joanna, I'm sorry, your last name isn't showing up on the screen. Could you just give it to me, please?
I'm sorry, were you speaking with me?
Yeah,
no. Jules, I was saying thank you so much for your testimony. I was actually speaking with Joanna. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that. I couldn't figure out how to change it. Last name is Wong, W-O-N-G.
Okay, email address real quick, or you don't want to share that publicly?
I will email you, Councilman.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry for taking this whole hearing in a different direction, committee counsel, sorry.
No worries, sir. Up next, we will have HDFC Coalition, and I believe the individual who is logged on with that, if you could identify yourself by name, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Time starts now.
Thank you. My name is John McBride. I'm with the Policy Committee of the HDFC Coalition, and thank you for having us. I'd like to speak today briefly on two bills. The first one I'd like to speak about, because I have a shorter comment, is Bill 842-2018, which is described as the luminous egress path markings. I must be frank, I haven't had time to really review the bill, but if I'm correct, this is to extend the sort of glow-in-the-dark markings taped onto the floor in public hallways, etc., to indicate egress. Am I correct? I'll assume I'm correct, and just keep talking and finish this quickly. So I just want to point out that for owners of multifamily buildings, which co-ops are, having to maintain these on the floor without them getting, ripped off from constant mopping and people walking in the hallways, etc., is going to be a real struggle, let alone the cost of doing it initially. And HPD will seek to, or perhaps DOB, I'm not sure, will seek to issue fines for these, and these fines will cause problems for the buildings. So I think it would be helpful if this is something that the council is interested in doing, to find out if we could perhaps put those markings on the baseboards sideways instead of directly on the floor, so they'd be less likely to be ripped off the floors, and then the building would be less likely to be fined. I'd now like to speak about Bill 1146B. I'd like to point out that there are over 1,300 HDFC co-ops in New York City, housing over 30,000 apartments, which and the apartments themselves house approximately 90 to 100,000 New Yorkers. HDFC shareholders are proud homeowners of modest means. HDFC co-ops were created within buildings that were in such poor physical shape that they were abandoned by slumlords in the 1970s and 80s.
Time expired.
The average age of HDFC buildings is probably 100 years old. We are still struggling to repair these buildings due to neglect from decades ago. I have just a couple more comments. We are now faced with new expensive requirements such as Local Law 11 or FISP, which is Facade Inspection Safety Program. I was informed by an architect this week that simply filing the paperwork to comply costs $6,000 just for filing. And we are getting phone calls and emails from HDFC boards that cannot afford to pay the DOB fines and don't know what to do. So the problem in general, this is a problem that spans other requirements that the city seems to come up with from time to time, that HDFCs are affordable housing. If HDFCs don't comply with the law because they can't afford to, the city will then say that the HDFC is neglecting to keep the building safe and perhaps fine it and put it on a track to be taken over by the city. If the HDFC accepts government aid, that aid is usually funneled through HPD, which is now requiring HDFCs to essentially sign over control of the co-op through extremely onerous new regulatory agreements. So if we don't comply, we end up with fines leading to eventual foreclosure. If we do accept help, HPD requires us to, in many ways, give up control of our homes. Neither scenario is acceptable. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Mr. McBride, thank you. And it is always a pleasure to work with the HDFC Coalition. Do you have any recommendations on behalf of the coalition at this time?
Well, I do want to say that this is no joke. Fire safety is a real issue, and I understand why the council is looking at this. I just think that this is just trying to throw a sledgehammer at a very delicate situation. This would bankrupt buildings that are not affordable housing. So think of what it would do to affordable housing. And I think it's a fascinating issue. I think the city should look at it. I think we should do studies, and I think we should find out if there's something else that we can do, maybe with a totally different technology or technologies that would really help save lives without threatening the actual viability of these of housing. And I think one of the issues that's been brought up by some of the other commenters or people testifying is, how do you do this in the first place, let alone the money? If you're knocking holes in people's walls and you're throwing lead dusts into their homes, if you're throwing potential asbestos into their homes, how do you deal with that? Who's going to pay for that? And where do these people go? Where are they going to go? And then these buildings themselves may not be structurally strong enough to support a big water tank on the roof to hold the water for the sprinkler system. So it's really good to focus on fire safety. People in HDFCs don't want to burn alive more than any less than anyone else. But if we can find a way to do it that's easier and more affordable and doesn't threaten the very housing we're trying to preserve, I think that would be a really laudable goal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McBride. I'm being prompted to try to move a little bit more quickly because we have a whole host of people who would like to speak and who have waited patiently. While I want to intently listen to every recommendation, I'm being prompted that we'll be here all night if I continue in this way. So thank you all who waited patiently. I think one of the things, though, Mr. McBride, you brought up that's important is us looking at new technologies and the implementation of new technologies to get us where we need to be in terms of safety. I'm going to give my oldest daughter, full credit, who always tells me, "Daddy, you got to skate to where the puck is going to be," right? So I think in this may be an instance that we need to be looking at skating to where the puck is actually going to be. So thank you for bringing up the technology portion of this, because we are moving leaps and bounds as it relates to technology. In this committee alone, we've heard hearings on drones, which you never thought we'd hear before,
right,
in terms of safety and safety mechanisms. So that's something I certainly would like to explore on behalf of the committee and on behalf of this suite of bills. Thank you.
If I could just throw a plug in, HDFCs are suffering under the FISP fines, and so just something to think about for another bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McBride.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cornegy. Next, we will hear from George Basilino, followed by April McIver.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is George Basilino, and I represent the Master Plumbers Council. I'm here today to give testimony on comments and to intro to 2151. In 2016, we were privileged to work with council staff to provide technical expertise and help negotiate the final bill. We're fully supportive of the council's proposal to extend the deadlines for inspections. The inspection process has gotten off to a slow start, due in some part to some ambiguities in the law and rule. I believe we would all agree that the intent of this law is to provide the minimum standards to safeguard the public. It would be beneficial if the council would provide clarification of these issues by making a few revisions to be included in this intro. The inspection scope must be clear to everyone involved in the process, and the persons conducting these inspections must possess the best available qualifications. In our written testimony, we have proposed changes to 5 sections of the law. I cannot fully discuss each change within my allotted time. However, the Master Plumbers Council is always available to provide further assistance if the council deems it necessary. I'd like to briefly discuss the major issue that is affecting compliance today. As of today, the Department of Buildings has determined that all tenant spaces are exempt from inspection. When the bill was negotiated with council staff, the understanding was that only residential tenant spaces would be exempt. The law specifies that the inspection must start at the point of entry of gas piping into the building, which is referred to as the POE. If the POE is located inside of a tenant space, the inspector will not have access to it. In terms of gas safety, the POE is ground zero. Most of the hazards an inspector may encounter will be found at this location. Both the Harlem and the 2nd Avenue incidents could have been identified and reported by a qualified person conducting a periodic gas inspection. In order for those conditions to have been reported, the spaces would first need to have been accessed. Waiving the requirement to inspect the POE due to the presence of a tenant space is a direct violation of federal and state gas inspection requirements. If a tenant space precludes an inspector from gaining access to the point of entry, the inspection will be incomplete. Our committees have been working with our industry affiliates on enhanced gas safety training since 2014. The research and studies conducted by our industry partners since that time have provided the scientific data that was utilized to create the periodic gas inspection training program and the inspection protocols that exist today. Without addressing and clarifying these issues, compliance will continue to suffer, and some inspections will not provide the level of public safety that the creation of this law has intended. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Good to see you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll be hearing from April McIver.
Time starts now.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Good, great. My name is April McIver. I'm the Executive Director of the Plumbing Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization representing plumbing contractors, engineers, supply houses, and manufacturers. I concur with a lot of what Mr. Basilino just said. I did submit written testimony, which is much more detailed, so please take a look at that when you do get a chance. Generally, we are in support of several bills on the agenda, including Intro 859 and 1746. But I want to use my time to focus on intro number 2151A, which is extending the compliance date for local law 152, specifically for the buildings and community districts 1, 3, and 10. You know, as everyone here knows, you know, the law was originally passed 4 years ago. It was supposed to go into effect in 2019, and due to several delays, the bill didn't go into effect until the beginning of this year. So I just want to concur with the, you know, Commissioner LaRocca. We don't have an objection to the extension of the bill, but we do think that the council needs to, you know, weigh the extension with the purpose behind the law and make several considerations, including an application for waiver, an amnesty program, or at least increase the penalties or add additional penalties in a time to cure, so that building owners do comply with this law. It is a safety law. It's very important. So those are some of the changes. Like I said, we have several recommendations of like 8-page testimony, so I'm not going to go into it, but again, the commercial tenant spaces, as Mr. Basilino mentioned in the point of entry, those are changes that we do recommend as well to be put in this bill. We think this is a great opportunity to make you know, changes to a lot of what we have now seen are flaws in local law 152 of 2016. So thank you for your time today, and please reach out to me if you have any questions about written testimony.
Thank you. Next
Thank
will
you
be
for your testimony.
Sorry, thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Arthur Goldstein and then Daniel Himmelsbach.
Time starts now.
I'll just, I represent the Master Plumbers Council. George has a statement. He had 4 other points to make. If you have time to hear them, I'll yield the rest of my time. Otherwise, we had submitted testimony.
No, Arthur, why don't you just give us the 4 points?
Well, George is the expert. He has it in front of him.
So you're yielding your time to George. Go ahead, George.
Time starts now.
You're on mute.
Thank you, everyone. A couple of other points that we had were the inspection entity. The law provides for a licensed master plumber or their direct employee with 5 years experience to conduct these inspections. In the past 4 to 5 years, as we created the training program, a licensed plumber with his license alone is not qualified, in our belief, to conduct these inspections. They should have the additional 7-hour training that's required of their employees to conduct these inspections. Also, the code requires the employee to have 5 years experience. The Department of Buildings has created a guest work qualification. We believe that the employee should have that guest work qualification. Why? It proves the 5 years experience, and it also proves that the person has measured knowledge of gas piping systems. Other than that, pretty much our changes are minor. One we would like to bring to the council's attention, which is very important, is if right now, what's going to happen if you don't do an inspection? The enforcement. The rule provides for a $10,000 penalty, but it doesn't force or mandate that the inspection is ever conducted. There's talk now from some building owners, well, I'm just going to pay the fine because it's cheaper than the inspection. So we would respectfully request that you consider that when you review this law. And other than that, we just made changes in the scope so that the scope would mirror the inspection process, which wasn't complete during the time that this law was negotiated. That's it. And thank you everyone for your comments and time.
So both George and Arthur, you know, in this extension period, it does give us an opportunity to work on the bill. There's no such thing as a perfect bill, and I've been around long enough to know that. But we do have an extended period of time, not only for the homeowners to be able to prepare themselves and be educated properly, but also for us to look at some of the changes that you're proposing. So I know that I'm willing to do that, and I believe that Chair of Finance Danny Drum is also willing to do it.
Thank you so much.
It looks like Arthur has his hand up. You don't get any time back, Arthur. What?
Just real quick, time is of the essence of the changes because inspections will still be.
You just went on mute again, Arthur, by accident, I think. I didn't do it, I swear.
My quick point is that time is of the essence because these inspections can still be occurring, and therefore the changes that the Master Plumbers Council and others apparently have agreed should take place should be done sooner rather than later, so there's clear direction on how the inspection should be done.
Okay, so can you just text me, Arthur, and we'll set up some time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next up, we have Eric Dillenberger, Chi Osi, and Fior Ortiz.
Time starts now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My company has been installing sprinkler systems for over 30 years, and 100% of our buildings are fully sprinklered. However, every one of those systems was installed prior to any occupancy. I oppose 1146B because it's retroactive. The building code evolves to make buildings progressively safer, more livable, and more energy efficient. However, relatively few of these changes were required to be retroactive because of practicality and expense. Most buildings are in some way non-compliant with the current code. While every single building in New York City could be mandated to be upgraded to the most recent code, where would it stop? The timeline allotted for the proposed bill is grossly insufficient. I doubt there is an adequate supply of licensed mechanical engineers to even design all the systems required in the city in the time budgeted. The expense of retrofitting sprinklers for many buildings will only serve to drive them into bankruptcy. A new sprinkler system will often require a new water main, excavating the street and/or new water tanks, upgraded structural supports to carry the tanks, pumps, and upgraded electrical systems to power the pumps. Add installation inside of occupied apartments, disruption to tenants' lives, lead paint and asbestos laws, and you're looking at a financial and physical pandemonium. As a contractor, I can't underestimate the extent of this. Without a mechanism for public financing and recovery of the costs of compliance, this is a recipe for economic destruction and physical disruption. And I respectfully submit this may not be the time for this bill. With my remaining time, I'd like to answer your chairperson's question that was asked a while ago about water mains, if you'll allow me. I can tell you that if the water main is over 2.5 inches in diameter, you are allowed to come off of it to branch off to supply the sprinkler. But if it's under, and this is an important part of this, you will need a separate water main to come in to supplement. And this is hugely disruptive. And there was a question within Chairperson Borelli's question, and that is the 40-foot issue. Is this 40 foot to the slab of the topmost floor, or is it 40 foot to the roof slab, or is it 40 foot to the parapet? It's going to make a huge difference on the count of how many buildings are included in this thing, and there is no distinction made in any of the bill for this, and the building department and the fire department look at those things very differently. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and I'm saying thank you for Chair Borelli as well.
Thank you. Next up, we have Chi Osi, followed by Fior Ortiz.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the council members in attendance, Chairman Cornegy, Chairman Borelli, and my fellow neighbors. My name is Chi Osi, and I live in the 36th City Council District. As a concerned citizen, activist, organizer, and homeowner, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the City Council today and City today. Local Law 152 and Intro 1146 can be discussed together. Both the law and the bill were created as predictive modules to prevent future calamities. Public safety was the goal and the want, something we all desire. However, both approaches lack the nuances necessary to be effective. At present, both will financially burden small home and commercial owners. The boiler inspection law and the DOB's execution of the law lacks proper notice, options being email, letters, social media awareness, and legal notices. It does not protect owners from unscrupulous contractors and could use an amendment that provides subsidies. Intro 1146 is not realistic. The costs associated could ruin some owners, displace residents, and disrupt the health security of everyone. Because of the ongoing pandemic, our neighbors are aggravated and fed up with mandates that feel punitive. There are alternatives, from extinguishers, detectors, and proper maintenance of the fire hydrants. There are many reasons being expressed to the committee today to amend Local Law 152 with an extension, but an extension without a rates tier, proper notification channels, and possible subsidies only pauses the problems. There are many reasons being given to the committee to halt Intro 1146. The best reason is a question why. Why create chaos in the middle of a health crisis? When all the data and statements from the experts, the fire department, show death by fire has trended low for 15 years. And there are secure and affordable options. I'm calling on you all today to both amend Local Law 152 with prudence and kill Intro 1146 with impunity. At present, over 1,100 citizens have advocated for the death of this bill, not including the angry crowd on this Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for your testimony, and I find your amendments, especially the tiered portion, very interesting. So we'll have a conversation about them.
Next up, we have Fior Ortiz, followed by A. Gravery, followed by Andrew Latsko.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon. My name is Fior Ortiz Joyner, president of the V. Bedford Bergen Street Block Association in Brooklyn's Council District 36. I'm in opposition of Intro 1146B. I'm all for safety, fire prevention, and life preservation, but this bill will have long-term detrimental effects to communities that are most in need, low income, Black and brown. My community is comprised of beautiful brownstones, many of them on landmark blocks. Most of these homes have been owned by the same Black and brown families for generations, as well as longtime homeowners. Chair Cornegie, with all due respect, I would be deeply concerned and disappointed if you were to support this bill, especially since you have many elderly homeowners in your district who have already been victims of deed fraud and have lost or been close to losing their homes due to liens and other shady practices. This bill will make your constituents even more vulnerable. I personally have received emails and calls from my neighbors who think we are deliberately being targeted. Quite frankly, we do not see how this bill will benefit us in any way other than to ensure we can no longer afford our homes. The benefactors will be greedy developers who will have the means to buy our homes once we cannot afford the sprinkler upgrades and accumulate huge liens. From the outside looking in, I am sure sprinklers in every building in New York City sounds like a great idea. In the grand scheme of things, it will be a nightmare to the most marginalized, indefensible communities. Many homeowners are struggling to pay their mortgages and property taxes, and many renters are struggling to pay their rent to their small landlords. It will cost tens of thousands of dollars to retrofit our properties, especially the buildings that are over 100 years old with many original details. For many of us, our homes are the path to generational wealth. This bill will jeopardize the financial future of many Black and Brown families. If this bill passes, it will be financially devastating. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz, for your testimony. And as I've mentioned on several of the social media platforms that I've been challenged on this particular bill on, this is a hearing which allows to hear your voice and the voices of all stakeholders. We've heard from engineers, architects, the fire department, fire safety folks, and that's what this is designed to do. So this is not a vote. There's no action being taken today. This is a hearing, figuratively and literally, to hear the voice of every single stakeholder. And I can assure you, as a homeowner of a brownstone in my district, there is no way I would vote for or push forward any bill that would disproportionately negatively impact homeowners, small homeowners, and affect our affordable housing stock negatively. So you can count on me as your council member to make sure that this bill in its current form, if it does not meet the needs and or disproportionately negatively impacts our folks, is not going to go forward. So, but thank you so much for your advocacy at UN, both you and Chi and everyone else who's on the call from my district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have A. Gravery, followed by Javier Herrera.
Time starts now.
Unmute. What? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Let me first start by telling you a little about myself. I was born and raised in Bedford-Stuyvesant. My childhood spent on Chauncey Street, while my adulthood on Macon Street. I have lived through the crack epidemic and the gentrification of my neighborhood. I currently live in a 4-story family brownstone, and this new sprinkler system law, 1146B, seems expensive and rash to people like me, and I have many questions. I value safety. However, a brownstone is not the same type of building as a tower. It seems like small homeowners are being held to task over issues that don't relate. That terrible fire that happened in the city at Trump Tower is just that. It's a tragedy. For this council to now require automatic sprinklers in buildings 40 feet and above, which do not come close to being the size of a tower, it seems unfair. Creating a blanket law that would cover all residences and that would cover all residences just seems very punitive at this time right now. There are better ways to address fire safety. I've heard some with the educational videos. I am for that. I grew up here, and my lived experience in Brooklyn has been that it's rapidly gentrifying, and this law feels more like it's less about safety and more about current homeowners being vulnerable to being priced out of their homes. I researched the cost of retrofitting an old brownstone like mine, and the sprinkler system is going to be super expensive, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, including getting a new standpipe, including getting access to a new water main, and that other people have already talked about how expensive it is. Also, families will have to live in their home while the sprinkler system is being installed. There are many elderly people that are still part of this neighborhood who have many health issues, including my dad, who's a severe asthmatic who lives with me. My neighbor is an amputee. Where are they supposed to live while this long renovation is underway? Is the city paying for relocation? Breaking open walls, ceilings, doors, floors, dust? Okay, I would like to finally say, I know that Councilman Cornegie, you said that this was a hearing, but the language of the law says, and I quote, that we have all the owners The 1-year interim report shall contain an affidavit by the owner of the building acknowledging that the sprinklers are required to be installed by December 31st, 2020. So I'm confused. The language of the law is saying we have to have some type of affidavit by 2020 of this year. Like you're saying, we're at a hearing. So can you please clarify? Thank you very much for everyone who has spoken.
So just so I can clarify, and thank you for your testimony, that bill and all bills in committees across the council have to come to a vote. There's no vote. So a bill just doesn't get enacted. It has to be voted on, and a majority will decide whether or not the bill, or we could look at making amendments to the bill. And I'm going to talk to the bill's prime sponsor about some necessary amendments. But the reason that no matter what the bill says, it hasn't been voted on, and this today is not a vote, it's only a hearing.
Chair Cornegie, I want to briefly chime in for a second. I shut my camera off for a little bit because my laptop is dying, and I just want the record to reflect that if you lose me in the next 5 minutes or so, it's because my battery is dead, and I apologize to anyone.
No problem, co-chair. I was actually in your absence holding you down. I actually took credit for a few things that you were responsible for in your absence.
Well, I heard. I just didn't want to turn back on.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we have Avi G, followed by Nikki Shower. Avi G, go ahead.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, Chair Cornegie. This is not directly about fire, but it is about affordable housing. And I think that as chair, you have to be made aware of what's happening. So just very briefly, I was supposed to sign an affordable housing lease on June of 2019, 545 days ago. These were all the documents I gave, 350 documents proving my eligibility. And then the response I got, Chair, was this one-page letter. After already being approved and supposed to sign, I was told that I was coming to sign a lease. You're rejected for inconsistent information. What happened after that, Chair Cornegie, was 545 days of torture. And with the help of several public officials of integrity, I was tentatively supposed to sign a lease 545 days later on December 1st, yesterday. I was approved by the marketing agent who passed my file to HPD for the final review. Now, based on HPD's previous representation, usually that's just a formal thing. Whatever the marketing agent says, HPD approves. My file was passed to HPD last Friday. So for the past 4 days, after 545 days of torture, which included homeless shelters, hotels, these 4 days, HPD has not approved my application and is now requiring more documents, more questions. How about this income? How about this income? What about this? What about this? Chair Cornegie, the council and this administration, if I could just complete here.
Wait, I want to ask you, do you mind getting on a three-way call with me, you, and HPD? Because we've had similar conversations before, and I don't think you're getting the resolution that you need. And it's my goal to, it's hard to do constituent services during a hearing, but I would like to get the three of us together, me, you, and HPD, so that you don't feel compelled to come on the hearings to have a discussion. And I don't want to be callous about what your case is. And so I clearly can't handle it right now during the course of a hearing, but I'd like to. Would you be willing to do a three-person conversation between me, you, and the commissioner at HPD?
Carnegie, respectfully, there's nothing I would want more, and I don't want to come on these hearings, but I've reached out to you, your personal email, I haven't heard back, and this is a 545 saga of torture that is unnecessary and unmerited. So I would be so happy to have a three-way call. How can we facilitate that?
I will call you tomorrow. I have received your emails. If you could just shoot me one that has your phone number in it, I will call you tomorrow personally.
Thank you for your compassion, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, Albert.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nikki Shower.
Time starts now.
Nikki, are you there?
Okay, I have now sent the same testimony to every council member. I presume most of them have gotten it as I've gotten your, for the most part, the automatic response. Fortunately, Speaker Johnson and Councilwoman Rosenthal replied that I could send in my letter to testimony. So I would like to say, I thought I covered every point, but Representative or Councilman Borelli and Correggi certainly added immeasurably, as did the Commissioner of the DOB, to the incredibly impracticality of this intro 1146B. I had no idea that this had been done in 2004 in commercial buildings, of which there were only about 1,000 versus 85,000 of the residential. And I had known that they might have to put, added roof structure and a bigger water tank, but I had no idea or thought about having water coming from the main. Do we have enough water pressure to even consider it? I am a landlord, and I also am a homeowner of a co-op. And as a personal homeowner, I could never afford to do what you're suggesting in my apartment, let alone the incredible disruption. I've lived in my apartment for over 50 years. It is large, and it would destroy it. This is a 1909 building. There's no dropped ceilings. It's all concrete. It would be a disaster. We are putting in, or we will be putting in piping for sprinklers in every apartment we undertake to do renovation in. And that's the best
Time
we
expired.
can do. That's the best we can do. And I think that's the most practical thing, is that anything coming up where they're doing a gut renovation, that would be the time for sprinklers to be put in. Otherwise, what would you do with all these poor souls? You'd kick them out of their apartments. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And right now, everybody's suffering financially, as well as, I only heard about this by a fluke yesterday. Most people don't even know about this law. I just think it's ill-conceived, not well thought out on the practical basis. And my recommendation is, you want to put it in, fine, but do it on anything that is undergoing renovation of a large scale.
At the risk of undue familiarity, thank you for your comments and your testimony, Nikki.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes the public testimony. We have inadvertently forgotten to call on someone to testify. If that person could raise their hand using the Zoom raise hand function, we will try to hear from you now. I will now turn it over to Chair Cornegy to close the hearing.
Thank you so much, Committee Counsel. I just want to say that this is the epitome or an example of the Council's commitment to hearing from every stakeholder on very critical and crucial bills. I think the amount of time that we've spent listening to will shape the way the way this bill goes forward. I myself was very alarmed to hear the expense in true numbers, what it is from engineers and from plumbers, and the disproportionate impact it will have on small homeowners as well as our affordable housing stock. So I really listened intently with the idea of going back and collaborating with all of the sponsors on all of the bills today to make sure that we are, as was mentioned before, following the Hippocratic oath, which is to do no harm, which is the intention of this council. So thank you everyone for your testimony. Thank you those I see people on this Zoom who were here from the beginning who stayed the entire time. Thank you for the bill sponsor. And I'd like to have my co-chair close out the hearing as well. Thank you, Chair Borelli, for your input and for your hard work.
Thank you very much. I think Councilman Grodenchik also wanted to say some final thoughts. But just in my last second before my computer dies, I do want to say thank you to all that participated, specifically on 1146, because I think it's important we articulate why, from a variety of different angles, this bill, as it's currently written, might not be the best, number one, for the residents, number two, for the landlords, and number three, for sort of the broader community at large. So I appreciate everyone, providing their perspective on why the problem might exist. And I thank you all and wish you all an enjoyable holiday season.
And I will give the final word to the bill's prime sponsor, who took pretty much of a beating today, but is very resilient and smart, and I'm sure willing to have a conversation going forward. Barry Grodenchik.
Thank you, Chairman. I really I enjoyed listening to everybody. And, I've been raised by great people, great mentors in public service who taught me that you got to listen. And we've heard a lot today from many, many interested parties, some of whom I met with before this hearing. I've heard from people in the district. I've heard from people all over. So I will be having a discussion with the chairman, and it's obvious to me, and I think to both chairs, that this bill could not, at least one of my bills, 1146, could not go forward as is currently written. So I want to make sure, let you know that I was here all day. I heard all the testimony, and I take it to heart. And we never want to do any harm. I grew up in public housing in New York City. I understand how important it is to our homes are our castles. That comes down to us, whether it's public housing or the fanciest home in the fanciest neighborhood. Every home is important, and we don't want to disrupt people's lives. So I will be speaking to Chair Cornegy about this, and we will go forward from there. And I thank you all again for coming forward today, as we always do as a city, to hear each other out and to make all legislation better. So thank you. Thank you, chairs, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays to everyone on this call and all your families. This commences the hearing of Housing and Buildings scheduled for December 2nd. Thank you so much.